my car wasn't working, so I tried to figure out why. Then, I got a message from my credit card company saying that I had an outstanding balance, and if I didn't pay it soon, my card would stay blocked. I remembered that my credit card payments are set up to pay automatically from my bank account. Confused, I checked my bank account and saw my balance was at zero, which didn't make sense because I should have had plenty of money there. The only other person who could have taken money from my account was my husband. I felt worried, so I called the police right away. My name is Garnet Felton, and I'm 30 years old. I work as a freelance web designer, which means I set my own hours and mostly work from home. I often go to meet clients in person, even though most meetings could just as easily be done online. I prefer face-to-face meetings so I can explain my ideas clearly. When deadlines are near, I sometimes work long hours without much sleep. My husband, Thomas, has been a big support, which helps me keep up with this demanding work. Thomas and I got married a year ago. We met a few years back when he represented a company I was working with on a project. We dated for a year and a half, got married, and he moved into my apartment. But there is a problem in my life. Thomas's parents have a habit of overspending and are often short on money. Thomas and I split our living costs, but since I earn more, I usually cover the monthly expenses, and Thomas pays me back half of it at the beginning of the next month. However, when I asked Thomas to pay his half this month, he hesitated and said, "Money is tight this month. Can I pay you after my next paycheck?" I was surprised. I was only asking him to cover half the expenses. He told me he had no money left until his next payday, which seemed strange since he'd just been paid 10 days ago. I asked him what was going on, and he explained that he'd been helping his parents financially. His vague response frustrated me, so I pushed him to explain more clearly. "Why can't you pay? And what's going on with your parents?" I asked. "Nothing, I just helped my mom and dad out with some money," he replied. Thomas's parents both work. His dad has a full-time job, and his mom works part-time. I didn't understand why they needed financial help, so I asked the question that had been bothering me. "Why do your parents need financial help if they're both working? They didn't need this before," I asked. Thomas replied, "I've been sending them money regularly, but this month, they asked me to send more." "Did you actually agree to send them more?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, I did. What's the problem? If my parents need help, it's only natural for me to support them," he said. "Fine, just make sure to pay me back when you get your paycheck at the end of the month," I said. Thomas can be quite stubborn when he's made up his mind, and he rarely apologizes. I knew pushing him more wouldn't make a difference, so I decided to wait until payday. But ever since that conversation, he started finding excuses not to contribute to our household expenses, and if he did pay, it was only about a third of his share. It's now been almost 6 months since he stopped paying his half, and I'm getting frustrated. I've been paying for everything, and on top of that, I do all the household chores. Thinking about it made me feel foolish and empty. One night, he came home late, looking a bit tipsy. I couldn't hold back and raised my voice. "Hey, if you're going to be out drinking, couldn't you have called? I made dinner and waited for you." "Sorry, a colleague invited me out unexpectedly," he said. "Fine, but you could at least send me a message," I replied. "I've asked you before to let me know if you'll be late." "Stop yelling at me as soon as I get home. It feels like I'm not welcome here," he snapped. "What's that supposed to mean? I'm the one who's covering all the bills and making dinner, and I get no consideration in return." His expression turned cold. "I can have a drink every once in a while. I work hard every day." "So do I said. "I handle all the household chores, too, and if you can't help with expenses, then maybe we shouldn't be sending so much to your parents." "Why are you bringing that up? My parents are my business, not yours," he said sharply. "What about us, Thomas? Aren't we a family, too? I'm your wife, living with you here, and I'm taking care of everything," I said, hurt. "Oh, why does it matter? You make more than me anyway," he scoffed. His dismissive attitude shocked me. Thomas only gets to live so comfortably because I'm covering everything. A simple thank you or sorry for the inconvenience would go a long way, but instead, he's acting arrogant. I was too angry to keep arguing, so I decided to talk again the next day. The next evening, as I was making dinner and waiting for him to come home, I heard the front door open. "Welcome home," I called from the kitchen. But there was no response. Then, I heard footsteps in the living room. When I looked, I saw that Thomas had brought his parents with him. Here's a simplified version. Mom, Dad, why are you here? I asked, confused. With a smug look, my husband replied, "My parents have something they want to discuss with you." "Discuss with me? About what?" I said, still puzzled. Encouraged by my husband, my father-in-law looked at me apologetically and said, "Sorry for dropping by unexpectedly. We wanted to talk about the money Thomas has been sending us." "What?" I said, caught off guard. Then my mother-in-law, who had been silent, spoke up. "Garnet, Thomas has been sending us money every month out of care for us. It's unfair for you to be so hard on him." "What are you talking about?" I asked, feeling both hurt and confused. "All I want is for Thomas to pay his share of our living expenses." She sighed and said, "Garnet, we're your in-laws, right? If your own family was struggling, wouldn't you want to help? Your father-in-law and I have been short on money lately, so we expect Thomas to keep sending us financial support. That means you should cover all the expenses for the two of you." I was shocked. They seemed to think it was completely normal for me to pay for everything. Finally, I couldn't hold back and said, "Enough. How is it fair for me to handle all the household chores and pay for everything too? Isn't that what married couples do? Married couples support each other, don't they?" my mother-in-law said, as if I were being unreasonable. My husband just laughed, entertained by his mother's words. No matter what I said, none of them would listen, and they only left after 9 p.m. that night. After they were gone, my husband handed me a set of signed divorce papers. Shocked, I asked, "What is this?" He looked down at me and said, "It's exactly what it looks like. If you keep defying me, I'll divorce you." "Are you serious?" I asked, barely believing what I was hearing. "Of course, if you don't want a divorce, just do as I say. Your role is to follow, not to lead." I wanted to stand up for myself, but I felt drained. Maybe there was no point in talking to Thomas anymore. Maybe I should consider divorce too. It didn't take me long to decide. The next day, I signed the divorce papers and went to City Hall. The papers were processed, and just like that, our marriage was over. Here's a simplified version. Now that I was single and free, I felt refreshed and ready to start a new chapter. I planned to move out soon and live on my own. To celebrate, I decided to go shopping at the department store. Since I usually work from home and had been covering all the household expenses recently, it had been a while since I bought anything nice for myself. Today, I wanted to treat myself. I headed to the women's clothing section, tried on a few dresses, and decided to buy two, but at the checkout, when I handed over my credit card, the cashier gave me a strange look. I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems we can't use this card," she said. "What? That can't be," I replied, confused. "We tried a few times, but it just won't process." This surprised me. The last time I used the card was to buy a new tablet for work, and it worked fine then. Why wasn't it working now? Feeling anxious, I rushed home and called the credit card company. After explaining the situation, the operator gave me shocking news. "We need you to pay the outstanding balance immediately, or your card will be unusable," she said. "Outstanding balance? What balance?" I asked, confused. "Yes, as of last month, we couldn't deduct the payment from your bank account." "That's impossible," I said. "Please check my bank account balance." Here's a simplified version. Now that I was single and free, I felt refreshed and ready to start a new chapter. I planned to move out soon and live on my own. To celebrate, I decided to go shopping at the department store. Since I usually work from home and had been covering all the household expenses recently, it had been a while since I bought anything nice for myself. Today, I wanted to treat myself. I headed to the women's clothing section, tried on a few dresses, and decided to buy two, but at the checkout, when I handed over my credit card, the cashier gave me a strange look. I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems we can't use this card," she said. "What? That can't be," I replied, confused. "We tried a few times, but it just won't process." This surprised me. The last time I used the card was to buy a new tablet for work, and it worked fine then. Why wasn't it working now? Feeling anxious, I rushed home and called the credit card company. After explaining the situation, the operator gave me shocking news. "We need you to pay the outstanding balance immediately, or your card will be unusable," she said. "Outstanding balance? What balance?" I asked, confused. "Yes, as of last month, we couldn't deduct the payment from your bank account." "That's impossible," I said. "Please check my bank account balance." When he finished explaining, he looked at me smugly and said, "You shouldn't be complaining. They're your family too now. Think of it as taking care of them. Stop fussing over a mere $5 million. Without a second thought, I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. Hello, police? I'd like to report a break-in and theft. My address is... Thomas's eyes went wide as I ended the call. What? Did you just call the police? Yes, I did. Isn't this a case of break-in and theft? He looked shocked and defensive. Break-in and theft? That's too much. I live here. I looked him in the eye and said firmly, we're not a couple anymore. Actually, I'm the one renting this place. So technically, this isn't your home. And remember, you signed those divorce papers yesterday. I already submitted them. This is my home now, and you're just an intruder. You've got to be kidding. Call them back and cancel it, he shouted. I waved my phone at him. If you even try to touch me, I'll call them again. They're already on their way. Why don't you just admit what you've done? He looked panicked. Wait, we loved each other, didn't we? Why is this happening? Loved each other? I scoffed. Don't give me that. Do you even understand whose fault this is? All of this started because you blindly supported your reckless parents. You can't just take someone's life savings and expect forgiveness. He stared at me, speechless, and I continued, who would forgive someone as selfish as you? Honestly, it makes sense. You were raised by parents who were irresponsible with money, so now you think it's okay to take someone else's hard-earned savings. I hope the police teach you a lesson so you feel the weight of that $5 million, I said. Just then, the police arrived, and Thomas crumbled to the floor in fear. Who's the person in question? The officer asked. I pointed to Thomas, who was now cowering. It's him. All right, get up. We need to take you in for questioning. Thomas tried to plead, saying, all I wanted was to help my parents, but his words were ignored as the police led him away. However, the police later informed me that the case was considered a civil matter, so they couldn't intervene further. Determined to get justice, I went to a law firm and filed a lawsuit against Thomas, demanding the return of the $5 million he took, plus an additional $1 million in damages, totaling $6 million. Of course, Thomas and his parents didn't have that kind of money. In the end, all three of them ended up deeply in debt. Despite their situation, his parents continued their reckless spending and even turned to loan sharks. I heard rumors that they now live in fear, hiding from debt collectors. As for me, I cut all ties with Thomas and moved into a new apartment. Thankfully, my career took off, and I started earning more than I ever had before. After ending things with Thomas, everything in my life seemed to fall into place. I only wished I had divorced him sooner. Though my marriage was a failure, I knew my life was far from over. I learned from this mistake and am now more cautious with whom I trust.
I'm Elizabeth, though most people call me Liz or Lizzie. A few call me Betty, but I've never liked that one much. I grew up in what you'd call an ordinary family, mom, dad, and my older sister Kate. Kate's 7 years older than me, which made a big difference. From as early as I can remember, our house was practically a shrine to Kate. Every wall was covered with photos of her first smile, her first steps, or her scribbled masterpieces that mom and dad treated like fine art. I was there too, but just kind of there. I got used to it, wearing Kate's hand-me-downs, playing with her old toys. It wasn't ideal, but I didn't know anything else. I learned to stay quiet and go with the flow. As time went on, the pattern held steady. Kate got new clothes. I got her old ones. She received the latest toys. I played with what she'd outgrown. But I never complained. I just existed. When I reached high school, Kate had already moved out for college on a scholarship. I thought maybe, with her gone, my parents would notice me more. But no, it was still all about Kate. Her college adventures, her new boyfriend, her bright future. Then one Sunday she burst in, grinning from ear to ear. Mom, Dad, I'm getting married, she announced, as if she'd just won an award. Mom burst into tears of joy, and Dad whooped with excitement. I just sat there, wondering if anyone realized I was in the room. Kate turned to me, her eyes sparkling. Lizzie, you'll be my bridesmaid, right? I forced a smile and nodded. Sure, Kate, congratulations. As everyone hugged and laughed, I slipped out of the room. No one noticed. They never did. Kate's wedding turned into a huge production. One night, I overheard Mom and Dad whispering in the kitchen. We'll have to take out a loan, Dad said, sounding worn. I know, Mom sighed, but it's Kate's big day. We can't let her down. My stomach twisted. They were going into debt for her wedding. I wanted to point out how absurd this was, but I knew better. My opinions didn't hold much weight here. The wedding was lavish, with Kate looking like a princess and my parents beaming with pride. I stood in my bridesmaid dress, feeling invisible as always. Then, after her honeymoon, Kate dropped another bombshell. I'd decided to be a housewife, she announced at Sunday dinner. Jack makes enough for both of us. I watched my parents try to hide their concern behind forced smiles. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Mom said, if it makes you happy. I wanted to scream. They'd taken on debt for her wedding, and now she wasn't even going to work. But as usual, I kept quiet. Soon enough, Kate was pregnant, with twins. Mom and Dad were overjoyed, spending every free moment doting on Kate and preparing for the babies. Then came the next idea. We should help them buy a house, Mom suggested one night. They'll need the space with 2 babies. Dad nodded. We could make a down payment on that nice place nearby. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Are you serious? I blurted out. You're already in debt from the wedding, and now you want to buy them a house. They looked at me, almost surprised, like they'd forgotten I was there. Elizabeth, Mom said, her tone sharp. This is what family does. We help each other. The twins were born a few months later, 2 little boys as adorable as could be. Mom and Dad spent every moment at Kate's new house, cooing over the babies. Meanwhile, I was finishing high school, thinking about college but wondering how I'd pay for it. Finally, one night, I worked up the courage to ask, Mom, Dad. I'd been looking at colleges. That's nice, dear, Mom said, not glancing up from the photo album she was making of the twins. I took a deep breath. I was wondering, could you help me with tuition? They exchanged that look, the one that meant they'd rather discuss anything else. Dad cleared his throat. Well, sweetie, we'd love to, but with the loan for Kate's wedding and helping with the house, we can cover half, Mom interrupted, as if that was generous. But you'll need to figure out the rest on your own. I felt like I'd been punched. Half. After everything they'd done for Kate, half was all they could offer me. But I knew it was pointless to argue. Okay, I said softly, thanks. As I turned to walk back to my room, I heard them resume chatting about the twins' latest adorable antics. Closing my door, I leaned against it and for the first time in years, let myself cry. I ended up enrolling in a local community college, not my dream, but the only option I could afford. To cover the gap, I took a part-time job at a nearby diner. Balancing classes and waiting tables was exhausting. Most nights, I came home dead on my feet, dreaming only of collapsing into bed. But even that small comfort was often snatched away. It started one Friday evening. I'd just finished a grueling shift and was looking forward to face-planting into my pillow when I walked in to find Kate in the living room, the twins crawling around her feet. Oh, Lizzie, she exclaimed. Thank God you're here. I'm at my wit's end with these 2. Can you watch them for a bit? Jack and I haven't had a date night in ages. Before I could respond, she'd slipped out the door, leaving me with 2 screaming toddlers. What the hell? I muttered, staring down at my nephews. Don't get me wrong, I love the little terrors, but this wasn't what I'd signed up for. Mom wandered in from the kitchen. Your sister's exhausted, honey. This is what family does. Besides, it'll be good practice for when you have your own kids. Kids? I was barely keeping my head above water as it was. This became the new normal. Every weekend, without fail, Kate would drop off the twins and vanish. Sometimes for errands, other times to grab dinner or catch a movie with Jack. And every weekend, I ended up as the unasked babysitter. One Saturday, after a week from hell with midterms, I had enough. Kate had just breezed out the door, leaving the twins mid-tantrum. I turned to Mom and Dad, my voice shaky. This isn't fair. I'm exhausted. I work, I study, and now I'm expected to give up my weekends too. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. Lizzie, your sister needs the help. You should be glad to do it. But what about what I need? I protested. I'm running myself ragged here. Mom sighed. Elizabeth, don't be selfish. Kate has 2 kids. You don't know how hard that is. I gave up. It was clear they weren't going to listen. So I resigned myself to my new reality. Classes during the week, work in the evenings, and unpaid babysitting on weekends. A personal life? That was a joke. The closest thing I had to a social life was small talk with customers at the diner. Dates? Forget it. Between work, school, and watching the twins, I barely had time to shower, let alone meet someone. I was at my breaking point. The constant juggling of school, work, and forced babysitting left me drained, physically, mentally, and emotionally. I needed a real break. a genuine escape from everything and everyone. So one evening, I made an announcement. Mom, Dad, I'm taking a few days off and going to the beach. The response surprised me. For once, they actually seemed supportive. That's wonderful, Lizzie, Mom said, looking genuinely happy. Where are you staying? I told them about a modest motel I'd found online right by the ocean. Nothing fancy, but it was all I could afford. Dad nodded approvingly. Good for you, kiddo. You deserve a break. I nearly did a double take. Were they actually acknowledging my need for rest? The day finally arrived. I packed my bag, hopped on a bus, and felt the weight lifting from my shoulders with every mile that passed. When I arrived at the coast, I could hardly believe my luck. The motel was small and a bit rundown, but the view of the ocean was breathtaking. I dropped my bag in the room and headed straight for the beach, inhaling the salty air. For the first time in months, I felt like I could truly breathe. I treated myself to lunch at a little seaside cafe, savoring each bite. No screaming kids, no assignments, no customers. Just me, my thoughts, and the calming sound of the waves. As the sun began to set, I returned to the motel, ready for a night of peaceful solitude. But as I approached my room, I heard familiar voices. Surprise, Lizzie. I froze. There, outside the room next to mine, were Mom and Kate, with the twins running in circles around them. What are you doing here? I stammered, my heart sinking. We couldn't let you be all alone on vacation, Mom chirped. We thought we'd surprise you. We're right next door. They'd booked one of the nicer rooms, I noticed, while I was in the budget option. Before I could fully process what was happening, Kate was already pushing the twins toward me. The boys have been dying to see the ocean. You don't mind watching them for a bit, do you? I want to take a walk on the beach. And I need to run to the store, Mom added. We'll be back soon. Just like that, they disappeared, leaving me with two hyperactive 3-year-olds tugging at my hands. What followed was nothing short of chaos. The twins tore through my tiny room like miniature tornadoes, ripping curtains, breaking glasses, and somehow managing to clog the toilet with apples. I ended up shelling out money I didn't have for repairs and to call a plumber. By the end of the weekend, I was more exhausted than ever. The final straw came when Kate, oblivious, sighed and complained about how tired she was from all the traveling. I finally lost it. The argument that erupted was epic. I yelled, Mom cried, Kate sulked, and the twins screamed in the background. That night, I packed my bags, determined to leave, and caught the first bus home in the morning. As the coastline slipped away, a shift happened inside me. This couldn't go on. Something had to change. When I dragged myself through the front door, exhaustion heavy on my shoulders, Dad barely looked up from the TV. I trudged to my room, mind swirling with emotions and vague plans. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I was halfway through packing when I heard the front door slam. Elizabeth, where are you? Mom's voice rang through the house, sharp and irritated. She stormed into my room, face flushed with anger. I can't believe you just left us there. Do you know how hard it was to manage the twins on our own? I bit back the urge to remind her that I'd been managing the twins alone countless times before. Instead, I just kept packing. Mom's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? I'm leaving, I replied, voice steady. I'm moving out. I need my own life. Their reactions were swift and predictable. How could you be so selfish? Mom cried. After everything we've done for you. Dad's face went red. You ungrateful girl. Have you thought about your sister? Who's going to help her with the twins? Something snapped inside me. My sister. What about me? When has anyone in this family ever thought about what I need? Mom gasped, and I continued. Kate has a husband. Let him help with the kids. I need to focus on my own life. Dad glared. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to keep paying for your college. You'll be on your own. I looked at them, these people who were supposed to love and support me, and realized they were strangers. Fine, I said, zipping up my suitcase. I'd rather be on my own than live like this. No life of my own, just constant demands and screaming kids. I'm done. I pushed past them, dragging my suitcase downstairs. They followed, shouting, but I tuned them out. As I reached the door, Mom made one last attempt. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, then opened the door without looking back. The next few weeks were a blur. I crashed on a friend's couch while searching for a more permanent place. Eventually, I connected with a girl from my study group who needed a roommate. We found a tiny apartment we could just barely afford between the two of us. With my parents cutting me off, I picked up more shifts at the diner, working almost full-time on top of my classes. There were nights I thought I wouldn't make it, when exhaustion was so overwhelming I could barely think. But for the first time, I felt free. No one made demands on my time. No one guilted me into babysitting or expected me to put their needs before my own. The apartment was small, my bed just a mattress on the floor, but it was mine. I threw myself into my studies with a determination I didn't know I had. Every all-nighter, every extra shift, every missed event, it was all for my future. 2 years flew by, and on graduation day, I sat in an auditorium scanning the crowd. A small part of me hoped to see a familiar face, Mom, Dad, even Kate, but the seats I reserved remained empty. Life after college felt like stepping into a whole new world. I landed a job at a marketing firm, and for the first time in years I had a steady income that wasn't just scraping by. I rented my own apartment, nothing fancy, but all mine. No roommates, no family drama, just peace and quiet, and it was glorious. I started doing all the things I'd missed. Going on dates, making new friends, even having a few short-lived relationships. It was fun to be young and carefree for once. My parents and I kept in touch, barely. We talked maybe once a month. Stilted conversations filled with awkward silences and thinly veiled disapproval. They were still sore about me moving out, and I wasn't in a rush to mend fences. Then came my 25th birthday. I had plans with friends, dinner and drinks, nothing wild. But a week before, Mom called. "Elizabeth," she said, her voice oddly cheerful, "we want you to come over for your birthday. The whole family will be there." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Walking into my parents' house was like stepping back in time. Kate and her husband were there, the twins, now 7, running around like little tornadoes, aunts, uncles, and cousins mingling and smiling. "Happy birthday, Lizzie," they chorused as I walked in. I put on a smile, accepting the hugs and well wishes. Then Mom handed me an envelope with a flourish. "This is from all of us," she said, beaming. As I opened the envelope, my stomach sank. Inside was a ticket to a beach resort. "We're all going," Dad announced proudly. "A big family vacation. We've paid for everything." I froze. A family vacation, with the twins. It was my ruined beach trip all over again. I opened my mouth to refuse, but Mom squeezed my arm, whispering harshly, "Don't you dare make a scene, not in front of everyone." So, I forced a smile and thanked them, all while screaming internally. The party wound down, relatives trickled out, and finally, it was just us. Me, Mom, Dad, Kate, and her family. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "I'm not going," I said flatly. "What?" Kate gasped. "But it's a family trip." "Exactly," I replied, "and I'm not interested in spending my vacation babysitting your kids again." Kate burst into tears. "You don't love us at all, do you? You don't care about your nephews." "I care about them just fine," I snapped, "but if I wanted kids, I'd have my own." The argument went in circles. Mom called me ungrateful, Dad looked disappointed, and Kate kept crying, all trying to guilt and pressure me into giving in. Finally, exhausted, I said, "Fine, I'll go." They all looked relieved, like they'd won some great victory, but they had no idea what I had in mind. The day of departure arrived, and I found myself at the airport surrounded by my overly cheerful family. Kate and her husband were practically bouncing with excitement, already making plans for all the alone time they'd have while I watched the twins. "You'll have so much fun with Aunt Lizzie," Kate told the boys, winking at me. "She'll take you to the beach, build sandcastles, maybe even go snorkeling." As we approached the check-in counter, I made my move. "Oh, I need to use the restroom," I said, feigning discomfort. "You guys go ahead and check in. I'll meet you at the gate." They nodded, distracted by luggage and excited children. I watched them get in line, then turned and walked in the opposite direction. My heart pounded as I approached a different check-in counter. I handed over my passport and the ticket I'd bought weeks ago for a flight to a small, peaceful island resort. Once through security, I found a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. With shaking hands, I typed a message to Mom. "I'm not coming with you. I'm going on my own vacation. Enjoy your trip." I hit send and immediately turned off my phone, avoiding the inevitable fallout. When I settled into my seat on the plane, I turned my phone back on briefly. It immediately exploded with notifications, missed calls, voicemails, angry texts. I listened to one voicemail from Mom, her voice shrill and furious. "Elizabeth Morgan, how dare you abandon your family like this? You've ruined everything." Your sister is in tears, her husband is furious. They were counting on you to watch the boys. You're the most selfish, ungrateful. As the plane took off, I sipped my champagne and gazed out the window. Yes, I felt a pang of guilt, but overwhelmingly, I felt free, like I could finally breathe for the first time in as long as I could remember. I was going on a trip that was just for me. No obligations, no babysitting, no family drama. Just me, the beach, and whatever I decided to do. When I arrived on the small tropical island, the warm breeze greeted me as if to say, "Welcome to freedom." I checked into my resort, a modest but charming place right on the beach. Out of curiosity, I turned my phone back on, and it instantly flooded with hundreds of messages, missed calls, and voicemails. I scrolled through a few with a mix of amusement and trepidation. "How could you do this to us?" from Mom. "You ruined everything," from Kate. "You're so selfish," Elizabeth, from Dad. I couldn't help but smile. For once, I'd chosen myself over their demands. I turned the phone off again and locked it in the hotel safe. For the next week, I was unreachable, and what a week it was. I lounged on the beach, read books uninterrupted, went snorkeling, and even tried surfing. I chatted with other vacationers, went on a few casual dates, and stayed out as late as I wanted. No schedule, no responsibilities, no screaming kids. Just me and the rhythm of the waves. Too soon, it was time to head home. I returned to my apartment tanned, rested, and more centered than I felt in years. But the real world was quick to intrude on my newfound peace. The very next day, there was a pounding on my door. I opened it to find Mom and Kate, faces red with anger. "How dare you?" Mom screeched, barging in without invitation. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Kate wasn't far behind. "You ruined our entire vacation." The boys were devastated. They launched into a tirade, voices overlapping as they hurled accusations and insults. I was selfish, ungrateful, a terrible daughter and sister. I owed them for the ticket they'd bought for the childcare I hadn't provided. I let them rant for a few minutes, their words washing over me without sticking. Finally, I spoke, calm but firm. "That's enough. I don't owe you anything. Not money, not childcare, not my time. I'm an adult, and I get to make my own choices." Mom opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "I'm not discussing this further. Please leave. When you're ready to treat me with respect and have a calm conversation, we can talk. Until then, it's best we don't communicate." They stared, shocked into silence, then stormed out with a few choice words. As the door slammed behind them, I let out a long breath. It hadn't been easy, but it felt right. Over the next few weeks, I made some big changes. I found a new apartment in a different part of town and moved without giving my family my address. I threw myself into my work and picked up new hobbies, painting, yoga, even learning a new language. There were moments of doubt and pangs of guilt, but every time I came home to my peaceful apartment, made plans without worrying about babysitting, or pursued a new interest just for me, I knew I'd made the right choice. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday my family and I will find a way to have a healthy relationship, maybe not. But I do know this. I'll face whatever comes on my own terms, standing tall and unapologetic in the life I've chosen for myself. I had just finished making dinner for everyone in the family, except the wives. That's okay. I felt happy inside. I looked at my husband and father-in-law. They both agreed with me. Finally, I could say it. "It's okay. I'll eat what I made." But then, I remembered something in my bag. I found it, a letter addressed to Mother. "My name is Molly. I married Kevin when I was 25, and 3 years later, we had our son. We had a happy life together. After our child was born, I went back to work, and we worked hard to raise our child. The biggest challenge in my life has been my mother-in-law. She's what you might call a control freak. Kevin always tries to please her, but when we first got married, it was tough. Kevin is the second of 3 siblings, and he's the only one who's married. The other 2 are still single. My mother-in-law always wants to be the center of attention in the family. She calls herself the Madonna of the family. It's all men here, and you know how difficult they can be. So I'm the Madonna of this family. Well, she really believes it. And then I entered the picture as the only daughter-in-law. My father-in-law and Kevin's siblings liked me, but I felt like I was seen as a rival in a way. I can't believe Kevin is getting married, my mother-in-law would say. Remember our family meals, she'd tell Kevin. What are you saying? Kevin would reply. It's true, Kevin. Even after you're married, you shouldn't forget the taste of our family's cooking. You should come over for meals. No, Molly cooks well, and we both work. We'll manage our own household. No, she'll make you do all the chores. That's not true. We decide what's best for us. Mom, I don't want to hear that from you. My husband is straightforward when he speaks, which I appreciate. He always supports me completely, but he sometimes misses subtle things and doesn't notice the situation as well. My mother-in-law tries to do things that are hard to notice. For instance, when we visit my in-laws, she prepares meals. It seems normal at first glance, but she never lets me help in the kitchen. Even when I offer, she insists I stay out. The food on the table all looks the same, and I'm not allowed to see what's inside. Once, I had a soup with lots of small fish bones in it. I didn't realize until I had a big gulp, and it made me feel sick. Another time, there was a steak with very bitter garlic mixed in, which was really unpleasant. Molly, are you okay? I think my stomach hurts. What's wrong? Oh, you don't like my food, do you? She's not feeling well. Please stop. Maybe she's just pretending to be sick. I don't think so. Hey, stop. Don't say that to someone who's not feeling well. Could it really be? Okay, everyone's taking her side. That's not what we meant. I made dinner for everyone. What's the issue? Don't worry, I'll finish it all. No, you startled me. What's wrong? Why are you yelling? It's just, I can't let you eat something that's cold. Don't worry about it. I said stop, but my mother-in-law didn't listen. She picked up the plate of meat and potatoes in front of me. What the heck? Oh, my husband threw away the food. Is this vinegar? It tastes completely different from what This has happened before. What? I once got served a soup full of tiny fish bones. Mom, what's happening? I didn't do anything wrong. You must have misunderstood. Of course not. This meat and potatoes taste awful. Here, try some. When my husband offered the food to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law took it from him. If it's that bad, you don't have to eat it. No, that's not what I meant. I'm asking why Molly's cooking is so bad. I have no idea. I think she did something. Enough is enough. It's unbelievable. You never let Molly in the kitchen, and seeing you take the plate like that makes me think something's up. Yeah, I think so too. Fine, I'm done. I'm never cooking another meal again. In the end, my mother-in-law neither admitted nor apologized for the situation, and my husband saw this as a reason to stop visiting his family. With that, we had to. The rest of the day was calm, until I saw something unbelievable with my mother-in-law. One day, I was on a business trip out of town. On my way back to the hotel after a meeting, I spotted my mother-in-law walking hand in hand with a young man in his 20s. What? No way. I was shocked. I'm certain I don't know that guy, so I decided to follow them. They went into a cafe and sat together at a window seat, not facing each other but sitting side by side. Without hesitation, I started recording. Then they leaned closer to each other. Whoa, I can't watch this. After about half an hour, they left the cafe and went into a hotel. The next day, I returned home, waited for the kids to go to bed, and then confronted my husband. Hey, you know what? You wouldn't want to see your parents doing something shameful to you. I was considering whether to tell my husband based on his reaction. If he didn't want to know, I planned to delete the videos and pictures I had taken. I don't really care. You're okay with seeing something shameful involving your own parents? Then I'll take note of that. I understand. Is there something wrong with your parents? But it was your parents. Oh my God, was it my mom? Yeah, I think so. What did she do? Nothing to me. I explained everything that happened yesterday to my husband. Seriously. I have videos and pictures. Let me see. I handed him my phone. Oh my God, that's awful. I can't believe I'm seeing my mom doing that. What does she think she's doing? He didn't seem shocked at all. Aren't you shocked? No, not at all. I mean, it's not the first time this has happened. What? When did it happen before? She used to cheat on Dad because of her frequent travel. She claimed that, but my brother was still in middle school. Dad forgave her, and they worked on their relationship. Oh, I see. Well, I guess this time they won't be able to rebuild it. I had an agency investigate. Can I use our money for it? Of course, it's worth it. Thank you. I'll keep you updated. It took a month to find an agency and get the results. My husband was shocked when he saw the report. Let's show the report to Mom. What? Is that necessary? Why not just give it to Dad and let him decide? That won't make us feel better, Molly. Mom wronged you, didn't she? Let's make sure she faces consequences. That's the only way I'll feel better. I should do something for my dear wife, shouldn't I? Oh, Kevin. To be honest, I wanted to see my mother-in-law lose her composure in front of me. I wanted to make her face the consequences of everything she's done to me. Well done, Kevin. I'll talk to my dad about this before we bring it up. I don't want to blindside him with the truth. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So we left our son at my parents' house for the weekend and went to my husband's parents' place. When we arrived, my mother-in-law criticized me as usual, but I wasn't bothered because I knew today would mark the end of her actions against me. We planned to confront her with the evidence during dinner, but my mother-in-law unexpectedly launched an attack right from the start. My husband, my father-in-law, and I were all a bit stunned. Let's begin dinner, my mother-in-law said, smiling. But all three of us, including me, were at a loss for words. World's tiniest meal. She doesn't like my cooking, so she won't eat. I just finished making dinner for everyone in the family, except the wives. Okay, fine. I feel relieved. I look at my husband and father-in-law. They both agree with me. All right, it's time to bring it out. It's okay, I'll eat what I made. Wait a minute. I rummaged through my bag. Here it is, Mom. I found this. In my hand is an envelope. Oh, I can't eat this. Oh yes, this was a gift for Mom. I completely forgot. I handed the envelope to my mother-in-law. Oh, you can be clever sometimes. Despite the sarcastic comment, my mother-in-law accepted it happily. And as soon as she saw what was inside the envelope, her hands stopped, and then her whole body started shaking. What's wrong? It's nothing. Are you sure? What did she give you? Just something ordinary. Come on, let's have a look. My mother-in-law tried to use her chopsticks to pick up rice, but she was shaking so much that the rice spilled out of the bowl. Mom mentioned. My husband took the envelope from my mother-in-law. Give it back to me. She looked desperate. My husband took out the contents of the envelope. What's this? It looks like an older woman arranging a date with a younger man. You should check the other side and the back too. That's interesting. On the back, there were photos of my mother-in-law with several young men. Initially, I thought she was having an affair with just one of them, but the agency found out she had relationships with multiple young men. You never learned, you? I can't believe my hard work ended up like this. I think you know what comes next. I'm filing for divorce. Wait a minute. This isn't cheating. It's just for fun. I won't let you waste our money on something like this. It's disgraceful. And these guys are even younger than us. Oh my God. By the way, everyone knows about this now, including Dan and Jason. We're cutting you off. I'm cutting you off too. Don't worry, just accept it. I know you can't afford to pay me alimony. In return, promise to stay away from us. Wait a minute. This wasn't just a casual date. I was just exploring different experiences, right, Molly? You've gone out to eat with other men before. No, that's not true at all. I don't spend money on men who aren't my family. It's a waste. I would have spent it on Kevin or Little John. Don't do this to me. You're also a woman, don't you? Yeah, I am, but what's your point? I'm saying it's not enough to just be a wife or a mother, is it? That's awful. Then why don't you stay single? You. I bet you'll cheat again someday. Don't insult Molly. She's nothing like you, and we all know it. Well, this is a good opportunity for me to tell you something. I've been planning to divorce you when I retire. It seems like the right time. Huh. I forgave you when I found out about your affair a long time ago. You didn't learn from it and kept doing the same thing. I knew it. Actually, on the days you were out, dinner would be frozen food. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? It's all your fault. When you weren't with me, that's what you did. You blame everyone else. It's a miracle our sons turned out to be good people with a mother like you. Yeah, that's because the three of us saw you as a negative example. I think you're the reason Dan and Jason are still single. If you have a spouse like this, your life is seriously messed up. Hey, oh sorry, my mistake. That person used to be my spouse. This is a good beginning. Now get out of my house. You're not getting any of my retirement savings. Wait a minute. I'm entitled to half of it. And because of alimony, I can claim it from 3 years ago when you were cheating on me. It's going to be a lot of money." My mother-in-law paused, thought about it, and then turned and, "Where is she going?" "She must have gone back to her parents' house." After that, my mother-in-law never returned, and they divorced. She was left with nothing. She moved back in with her parents, but now that the money's gone, she seemed disconnected from the younger crowd and stayed home for a while. My husband's grandparents, instead of taking her back in, had her start working full-time. Now she works at a supermarket near her parents' place. My father-in-law is a very forgiving man. My mother-in-law made a big mistake betraying him. With her gone, our family is finally in harmony. My brothers-in-law, Dan and Jason, who rarely visited before, are now around often. Lately, they've been talking about getting married. I'm happy for them. Everyone is smiling. I'm pregnant with my second child now, and will continue putting my family first. Dealing with a mother-in-law like that was tough. It's sad how people who cheat often lose their way. I hope my father-in-law can enjoy his later years in peace now. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video.
A factory worker father hurriedly excused himself upon her announcement. As soon as she uttered those words, my stepmother, with a wicked grin, impulsively splashed tea onto my dad's face. Beside her, she burst into laughter. Surprisingly, my stepfather made no effort to reprimand her. The stain on the suit my dad had meticulously cleaned for this occasion rapidly expanded. Fortunately, the tea was lukewarm, nearly cold, alleviating concerns about burns. Amidst my astonishment, I handed a napkin to my dad while Tom, in a panic, tried to dry his father-in-law's suit. Even in the midst of worrying about potential injuries, Tom couldn't help but laugh at the absurd behavior of his parents. Throughout this chaos, my dad remained silent, stood upright, and pointed at them, declaring, "Well then, I'll just ruin your company." The unfamiliar sternness in his voice caught me off guard. He took my hand, and we left the chaotic scene behind. Tom scolded his parents before quickly joining us. "I'm really sorry, father-in-law. I'll make my parents apologize later." He apologized, but my dad, with a grave tone, reassured him, "No need. We're done with them anyway." He patted Tom's shoulder as we walked away from the tumultuous O'Connor household. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yvonne Warner, a 26-year-old office worker. Raised by my single father after losing my mother at a young age, I admired his dedication to both work and family. My father, in charge of a factory, managed to attend all my school events, even if he had to rush back to work afterward. In college, I met Tom, 2 years my senior, who was gentle, sincere, and polite. Despite his popularity, he accepted my confession, but there were concerns about his relationship with his parents, which he didn't elaborate on. We continued to date, and although Tom lived alone, he occasionally visited his parents, always looking exhausted afterward. Tom prioritized me in our relationship, and I was proud of him. I wanted to introduce him to my dad, and when the day finally came, it was a mix of fear and excitement. Surprisingly, my dad and Tom got along well, and I felt relieved to see the two important men in my life getting along. Yet Tom's odd excitement after the meeting left me puzzled, and he evaded any further questions about it. As Tom and I had seemingly hit it off with my dad, I couldn't shake off a growing worry that perhaps Tom's feelings were not as positive as he claimed. This anxiety lingered, leading Tom to request an important conversation a few days later. Nervously anticipating the discussion about our recent encounter with my dad, I met Tom at the agreed-upon cafe. Upon reaching the cafe, I noticed Tom already seated, his face wearing a gloomy expression visible through the glass. Suppressing my own anxiety, I approached him with a cheerful greeting. "Tom, sorry, did you wait long?" I softly spoke as I reached him. Startled by my touch on his shoulder, Tom exclaimed, "Well, Yvonne, you scared me." After a deep breath, he continued, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Please have a seat." Sitting across from Tom, I ordered from the waiter, my concern mounting as Tom's downcast expression persisted. Hoping to encourage him to share his thoughts, I spoke up, "Hey, Tom, what's bothering you so much? Is there something wrong with my dad?" Tom, taken aback by the direct question, denied any issue with my dad, stating, "Absolutely not. I respect your dad. It's just that my. He trailed off, avoiding eye contact. Sensing the need to delve deeper, I sighed and pressed him. "If you're worried about something, I want to know what's on your mind." Tom took a deep breath, as if preparing himself, and began to disclose a shocking revelation. According to him, his parents were judgmental and lacked class, constantly interfering in his life. When he introduced a girlfriend, his parents would criticize her on the spot, leading to tearful breakups. Tom desired to marry me but was troubled by the prospect of involving his parents in our marriage. Assuring him that we didn't have to include them in our union, I suggested enduring their presence during the wedding formalities. Reminding him that my dad liked him, I thought the matter was settled, but Tom had more to share. He revealed that when he met my dad, he was surprised by the stark contrast to his own parents. Expressing a desire to become the son of such a great man, Tom shared his dilemma about marriage. While he was pleased that my dad liked him, he couldn't decide whether his parents should also become his in-laws. Tom brightened momentarily but sighed deeply afterward. In a moment of realization, Tom looked up and apologized. He proposed a unique solution. When we meet his parents for our marriage, could my dad come along? Tom hoped that the presence of someone so respectable might eventually influence his parents positively. I agreed to discuss it with my dad, but I couldn't help expressing my wish that Tom had approached the conversation differently. Understanding his misstep, Tom quickly apologized and then, with newfound determination, formally proposed marriage to me. Swiftly deciding to discuss the matter with my father, who was initially hesitant, I approached him with Tom when he formally asked for my hand in marriage. After obtaining my father's agreement, Tom and I arranged a date to meet his parents. On the appointed day, dressed in our best attire, we stood at the front door of Tom's family home, preparing to meet his parents for the first time. Given the unsettling stories I had heard about Tom's parents, my nerves were understandably on edge. My father, attempting to lighten the mood, encouraged us not to be too tense, assuring that Tom's parents were just overly concerned. His supportive pat on the back eased my anxiety slightly. When Tom rang the doorbell, there was no response, causing a momentary panic. Tom rang again, but still, there was silence. Not wanting to create a bad impression, Tom excused himself and entered the house first, leaving my father and me exchanging concerned glances. After what seemed like an eternity, Tom reappeared, looking flustered. Before I could inquire about the delay, he made excuses with a forced smile, promising us they would be ready soon. My father sighed in exasperation, and I couldn't shake the growing worry that this incident might jeopardize our wedding plans. Finally, Tom ushered us inside, where his parents awaited us. However, their demeanor was peculiar. His mother greeted us with a sly grin, while his father seemed disinterested, looking away. Despite the tense atmosphere, I decided to proceed with the introductions. Tom, regaining composure, introduced both my parents and me. Despite the warmth of his thoughtful introduction, his parents sneered, and the atmosphere remained strained. In an awkward turn of events, Tom's mother splashed tea on my father, staining the suit he had meticulously cleaned for the occasion. Shocked, I offered my dad a handkerchief while Tom panickedly tried to wipe off the tea stains. His parents, laughing in response, only fueled Tom's anger. My father, standing up, pointed at them and declared, "Then I'll ruin your company," a tone and statement I had never heard from him before. Taking my hand, he left the house, leaving Tom's parents in the wake of Tom's scolding. Returning to our house with Tom, my father changed clothes, and Tom earnestly apologized for the incident. I could hear my dad's troubled voice during their conversation. Although I was shocked by Tom's parents' actions, I knew they wouldn't be easy to get along with. Seated on the living room sofa, clenching my fists, I replayed the event in my mind, seething at the insult directed at my dad. When my dad and Tom finished changing, Tom immediately apologized to me, almost bowing down, expressing regret for not anticipating such behavior from his parents. His sincerity was evident, and he didn't even ask for forgiveness. Feeling the need to apologize as well, I took Tom's hand as he kneeled on the floor, expressing my regret for suggesting the meeting without fully understanding the situation. Unexpectedly, the situation took a serious turn, and I felt compelled to apologize to my father for the unintended consequences of my thoughtless suggestion. His troubled expression and shrugged shoulders conveyed the difficulty in addressing the situation. Determined to understand the gravity of my dad's threat, I sought clarification. "Dad, was what you said true? Are you really going to ruin their company?" To my question, my dad glanced at Tom and nodded firmly, affirming his intent. My father, the CEO of a renowned local enterprise, revealed that their business was already struggling. As the factory manager and CEO, he had started as a worker in the very factory, sacrificing his dream of becoming a painter to raise me alone after my mother's passing. He worked tirelessly and climbed the corporate ladder through several promotions. Eventually, he took over as the CEO when the former CEO retired. During our recent visit to Tom's family home, we discovered that one of the subsidiaries managed by Tom's father, my father-in-law, belonged to my dad's company. Unfortunately, Tom's parents' prejudices and Tom's mother's premature actions prevented this from being clarified, leading to the present situation. My father explained that his company faced management difficulties, contemplating downsizing without resorting to layoffs. Regret was evident in his words as he considered the impact on his employees. After Tom's serious conversation with my father, he proposed closing down the subsidiary where Tom's parents worked. Concerned about the consequences for Tom's parents, my father questioned if Tom was okay with it. Tom, resolute and having cut ties with his parents, expressed a desire for them to reflect on their actions. Despite the difficulty, he requested permission to get engaged with me. Moved by Tom's earnestness, I also pleaded with my father to allow our engagement. My father, crossing his arms, pondered Tom's words. Despite the recent incident, he eventually gave his approval, setting a condition related to Tom's parents being company executives. My father demanded to know Tom's plan for the employees and made it clear that our marriage would be off if Tom couldn't handle this responsibly. A few days later, Tom presented a plan to my father for his father's company's employees. He had arranged a meeting with my father to discuss possible job placements for all the employees. Tom showed genuine concern for their transition and offered to work for free until they were settled and producing results. He expressed his eagerness to compensate for any shortcomings with his work and salary, and once settled, to re-engage with me. Tom, demonstrating his earnestness, saw himself as partly responsible for his company's collapse and wished to be a positive force in the situation. Upon returning home, I discovered that our marriage would be delayed due to an unavoidable circumstance. When I greeted my father, he expressed, "Welcome back, Ivan. You heard right. I'm sorry for deciding such an important thing on my own, but I thought it wouldn't be fair if I were the only one happy." While he apologized, I seized the opportunity to propose working in the company with Tom, offering to work for free. I insisted that my father should accept Tom's proposal. Despite Tom's attempts to dissuade me, I desperately begged my father, who initially remained silent. After repeated pleas, he uncrossed his arms and quietly nodded. Meanwhile, Tom's parents had yet to apologize. My father seemed to have been waiting for them, but the time had passed. He began preparations to take over Tom's father's company. Time passed, and the day arrived when the company collapsed. Tom's parents summoned us to their home, where a crowd of former employees protested the company's closure. They accused us of being the root of all evil and blamed me for seducing Tom and ingratiating myself with my father. Despite the accusations, Tom attempted to calm the former employees, explaining the situation and offering new job placements. Ignoring his parents' outbursts, Tom apologized for the inconvenience caused and promised to work with dedication. The former employees, reassured by Tom's efforts, began leaving, relieved and grateful. As they departed, my father promised to inform them of the details later. In the aftermath, Tom's parents continued to fuss about their predicament. Tom sighed in exasperation at their blame shifting, expressing concern about losing their house used as collateral. Despite their pleas, Tom's parents were met with indifference as the former employees had already heard the truth from Tom and disregarded the parents' desperate appeals. My father also ignored their words, and the former employees left relieved, leaving Tom's parents to confront the consequences of their actions. "I don't care what you think. You got what you deserved, so it can't be helped. Why don't you learn a little remorse?" My father reprimanded Tom's parents, who seemed oblivious to our scolding. Unable to bear their persistence any longer, I finally lost my patience. "Haven't you just caused trouble for Tom all this time, boasting about being business owners and only caring about titles? Isn't that why this happened?" My words left his parents speechless, seemingly ready to retort, but halted by my father's decisive intervention. He made it clear that he wouldn't allow them to speak further. A business owner is supposed to take responsibility. You should at least complete your final task properly. Left without a response, Tom's parents were scolded collectively and could say nothing more. Leaving them behind, we left the scene. And eventually, Tom's parents lost everything: the company, the house, and the land. They never provided any guarantees to the former employees and evaded responsibility. After losing everything, they reached out to Tom for help. But having cut ties with them, Tom coldly turned them away. Now, they were probably in jail, and we heard nothing from them since. Even if they got out, they still had a debt to the former employees, so the situation remained dire. Afterward, Tom and I quit our jobs and joined my father's company. Living off our savings in the first month, we worked for free as promised. One day, we encountered a former employee of Tom's parents' company at work. Eager to shake our hands at the new workplace, the employee expressed their gratitude to my father for giving them a chance. Thanks to Tom for arranging the job, and also conveyed many thanks to me. Despite not remembering the specific incident, I had apparently helped that person carry materials. After expressing immense gratitude, the former employee left, expressing a desire to keep working hard. Feeling somewhat redeemed by his words, we hurried to my father's office, where he warmly welcomed us. Handing us several thick envelopes, he explained, "It's your salaries for the past months." It ended up being multiple envelopes because it couldn't all fit into one. We were stunned, unable to swallow the situation, but my father continued, "Your hard work revitalized the team. They constantly expressed their gratitude and concern for you. I couldn't possibly leave such excellent employees unpaid, and our performance has improved significantly. Thank you truly." Hearing this, we hugged each other and cried, moved by the concern shown for us. My father then added something even more wonderful. "Tom, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with my daughter, would you marry her?" Overjoyed, Tom replied tearfully, bowing to me and my father. I hugged Tom, crying alongside him, and so we got married. Continuing to work at my father's company, we lived happily every day, gradually becoming more adept at our jobs and contributing more effectively. Our time at the company was approaching a pause as I was about to take maternity leave. My father, Tom, our colleagues, and I were all looking forward to the arrival of our child.
My husband's estate, valued at $80 million along with this house, will be inherited by me as we have no children. My sister-in-law's demeanor is always a challenge to contend with. My name is Emma, a 45-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are blessed with 2 sons, one a senior and the other a sophomore in high school. The elder one is currently preparing for his college entrance exams, aspiring to follow his passion for law. His ambition was ignited at a tender age, likely influenced by my brother Oliver, who is a seasoned lawyer. A few years back, Oliver established his own law firm, which my eldest son admires greatly. From his early years, my son demonstrated a knack for academic excellence, a trait that Oliver wholeheartedly encouraged upon learning of his nephew's aspirations. Whenever they meet, my son reaffirms his goal to emulate his uncle's legal career, to which Oliver responds with a warm chuckle, urging him to swiftly pursue his dreams and walk in his footsteps. When my brother, who was married but childless, came to visit, he delighted in playing with my sons and showering them with affection. His wife, a woman a decade his junior, kept her distance from our family, rarely gracing our home with her presence. As a result, our interactions with her were few and far between. My brother and I endured the loss of our parents at a young age, leading him to step into a parental role when I was on the brink of marriage. Soon after my wedding, he followed suit and tied the knot himself. My husband and I felt reassured when we learned of my brother's intention to marry a younger woman. However, upon meeting his fiancée, I was taken aback by her perpetually sullen demeanor. We had anticipated joyous exchanges, considering she was about to marry into our family, yet her expression remained persistently glum as she regarded us. In the presence of my brother and his fiancée, I offered a superficial compliment, saying, "You two make a great pair." Yet my true sentiments emerge only in the quiet moments at home with my husband. I couldn't shake off the curiosity about why she seemed so discontented. As their marriage was sealed, my husband echoed my concerns, remarking with a hint of worry, "She didn't seem particularly joyful as a bride. It's a bit concerning, isn't it?" Shortly before their wedding, my brother tied the knot with his 10 years younger fiancée. To celebrate, my husband, our children, and I paid them a visit at their newly acquired house. The grandeur of the place left me in awe, a testament to my brother's success as a law firm owner. However, the absence of my sister-in-law raised eyebrows. In jest, my husband quipped to my brother, "Has your wife already abandoned ship?" Though meant in good humor, the tension in my brother's reaction left us both uneasy. According to him, whenever there's trouble, his wife retreats to her parents' home. Today, she stayed over to celebrate her mother's birthday. My husband's expression drooped, perhaps regretting his attempt at humor. Then, out of the blue, my brother posed a serious question with a poker face. "If I were ever unable to have children, would you consider letting me adopt one of yours?" I initially brushed it off as a jest, but my brother's earnest demeanor suggested otherwise. Stunned by the unexpected proposal, I found myself unable to respond, while my husband, with a chuckle, replied, "Who knows what the future holds? Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. If you're serious, and if our children are comfortable with it, we can discuss it then." Though my husband seemed to take it lightly, I couldn't shake off the underlying concerns about both the adoption suggestion and the strained relationship between my brother and his wife. It wasn't my place to interfere in their marital issues, but I couldn't help but worry. Subsequently, whether it was our visits to my brother's home or his visits to ours, he always came alone. His wife was conspicuously absent, further fueling my apprehensions. My brother never brought up his wife, so I refrained from prying into their relationship. After over a decade of marriage, her presence faded into obscurity in my mind. This year, as my eldest son's acceptance into his dream law school was celebrated at our house, my brother broached the topic of adoption once again. "Just as I mentioned before, would you consider allowing me to adopt one of your children?" he inquired. Their inability to conceive led him to revisit the idea. The last time we discussed it, they were newlyweds, so there was no urgency. Yet this time, my brother's tone conveyed seriousness. Despite the weight of the proposal, my husband's response was swift and nonchalant. "Would you prefer our eldest son, considering his ambition to become a lawyer?" he quipped. While my husband's manner seemed casual, I remained cautious, mindful of the profound impact such a decision would have on our sons' lives. Even though my brother, their uncle, would be adopting them, I couldn't shake the worry about my sister-in-law's potential treatment of my sons, who wouldn't be her own flesh and blood. Seeking reassurance, I cautiously asked my brother, "Is your wife on board with the adoption?" His response, accompanied by a wry smile, was somewhat comforting. "Don't fret over her. We've discussed it already," he assured me. While I felt relieved knowing they had addressed the matter, I couldn't reach a decision immediately. Instead, I resolved to involve my sons in the discussion and let them weigh in, considering they were already in high school and capable of making their own choices. We left the matter unresolved that day, but a few days later, I received an urgent call from my brother's lawyer's office. They informed me that he had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Frantically, I made my way there, only to find the law firm staff anxiously awaiting news. It appeared my brother had suffered a stroke at work and was now unconscious. Once I arrived, the law firm staff departed, leaving me to confront the worrying situation alone. The law firm staff also mentioned they couldn't reach my sister-in-law. I tried calling the landline, but received no answer, and I didn't have her cell phone number. Eventually, my husband and younger son arrived, but still there was no luck reaching her. It was my younger son who stumbled upon a smartphone amidst my brother's belongings. With some effort, we managed to unlock it and began searching for her contact details. When she finally picked up the call from that phone, her response was laced with anger. "I warned you not to call again. I'll take legal action," she snapped. Attempting to convey urgency amidst her tirade, I interjected, "It's Emma, Oliver's sister. My brother has collapsed and is in the hospital." Her tone softened upon realizing it was me on the line. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I mistook you for Oliver. You said he collapsed?" she inquired. After updating her on my brother's condition and the hospital he was admitted to, her response took a surprisingly casual turn. "I'm unable to come to the hospital right now due to prior commitments. Please keep me informed," she requested before abruptly ending the call. I couldn't help but wonder if my sister-in-law had more pressing matters to attend to, especially considering her husband's illness. With the realization that she wouldn't be of any assistance, we resolved to care for my brother ourselves. Since my eldest son had completed his university entrance exams and was spending most of his time at home, he took on the responsibility of visiting my brother daily on my behalf. Despite our efforts, my brother remained unconscious and in critical condition. However, my sister-in-law never reached out or made an appearance at the hospital. Nearly a week after my brother was admitted, I made another attempt to contact her. This time, she answered the phone promptly, her tone oddly cheerful. "What's the matter? Is he dead?" she exclaimed, lacking any semblance of empathy. Struggling to contain my anger, I responded calmly, "He's still alive. Why haven't you visited him at the hospital?" Her response, dripping with indifference, only fueled my frustration. "I'm neither a doctor nor a miracle worker. There's nothing I can do for his recovery," she retorted dismissively. Her callous demeanor pushed me over the edge and I hung up the phone, unable to suppress my growing rage. Suspicions began to brew within me regarding my brother's motives for wanting to adopt one of my sons. It dawned on me that perhaps he had resigned himself to the idea of not having children with his wife, indicating possible discord in their marriage. Curiosity led me to inquire about how they met after their marriage was finalized, to which my brother revealed they had been introduced through a marriage counseling agency. The revelation stirred a mix of emotions within me, especially the notion that my sister-in-law may have married my brother solely for the security of his profession as a lawyer and the promise of a comfortable life. This thought fueled my indignation further, but when I confided in my husband, his response cut deeper. If Oliver were to pass away in his current state, his wife would inherit the entire estate given their lack of children, he remarked callously. As my brother joined us to celebrate my eldest son's recent achievements and broached the topic of adoption, I couldn't shake the suspicion that perhaps his interest stemmed from considerations of inheritance rather than genuine familial intentions. I wish I could have reached a decision then and there, but the situation left me feeling powerless. After my brother's departure that day, I casually broached the topic with my two sons. To my surprise, my younger son expressed eagerness to be adopted, viewing it as a ticket to an easier life under Oliver's wing. Unlike his older brother, he seemed content to go with the flow, lacking clear aspirations for the future. I had anticipated my eldest son, who admired his brother, to follow suit, but his response caught me off guard. "I don't want to be adopted," he declared firmly. "As the eldest, it's my responsibility to take care of you, Mom, and Dad." His words filled me with pride, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that my eldest son, with his ambition to become a lawyer, was the more suitable candidate for adoption. Although I longed to initiate the adoption process on behalf of my unconscious brother, the circumstances thwarted my efforts. Despite my reluctance to claim any share of my brother's inheritance, I couldn't bear the thought of a single penny falling into the hands of my sister-in-law, who seemed to be eagerly awaiting his demise. I could only hold on to the hope of my brother's recovery, but it never came to fruition. Days later, he passed away, leaving me with the solemn duty of informing my sister-in-law. "My brother has passed away. Can we arrange a funeral?" I conveyed the somber news. To my surprise, her response was oddly cheerful. "You have the final say. Just please don't involve me in any formalities," she replied before abruptly ending the call. Feeling a surge of frustration, I held back my emotions as my husband and I took charge of planning the funeral. With assistance from the law firm's staff, we navigated through the arrangements. While my husband expressed concerns about the firm's future, my brother had already ensured its stability by entrusting its management to a capable individual. Thus, the firm would continue to operate seamlessly as a corporation. At the funeral, the turnout was overwhelming, with countless wreaths brought in to pay respects. The hall overflowed with mourners, a testament to the profound impact my brother had on so many lives. As the funeral unfolded, I found myself once again marveling at the incredible person my brother had been. Alongside me, my son lent a hand in the somber proceedings. However, his mood darkened upon witnessing the notable figures in attendance, presidents of major corporations, politicians, and other dignitaries. "I should have been the one adopted," he lamented bitterly. "I never realized how remarkable he truly was." My husband and I empathized with his sorrow, understanding the weight of his realization. As I fulfilled my role as a pallbearer, no one questioned the absence of my sister-in-law, nor was it brought up in conversation. I couldn't help but wonder if we were the only ones privy to the knowledge of my brother's marriage. They hadn't had a wedding ceremony, instead they simply embarked on a honeymoon. It dawned on me that even our relatives might have been unaware of their marital status. Reflecting on the situation, I couldn't help but harbor regrets. If only they hadn't married, there wouldn't be a need for a wife who failed to show up at her husband's funeral. And I lamented not allowing my brother to adopt my younger son sooner, fearing that she might seize control of my brother's estate with the support of the law firm's staff. The funeral for my brother had concluded, and I extended invitations for everyone to gather at his house for a meal, expressing my gratitude. "Thanks to all of you, my brother will be able to rest in peace," I said, my voice laden with sorrow. As we mourned together, my sister-in-law made a sudden appearance, clad in a flashy pink coat, as if timed to coincide with the conclusion of the funeral. Addressing her with a mix of surprise and suspicion, I asked, "Why have you chosen this moment to come?" With a wide grin on her face, she spoke loudly for all to hear. "As my husband's wife, I inherit his estate, valued at $80 million, along with this house. With no children in the picture, everything belongs to me." Her triumphant declaration prompted laughter from my brother's colleagues, leaving us puzzled by their reaction. My sister-in-law shot them a glare and scolded, "What's so funny? How rude." Her smirk quickly faded when one of the lawyers interjected, "We're aware that you're officially divorced." The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. "You were divorced?" I exclaimed incredulously upon hearing the news the day before my brother's collapse. Glancing at my sister-in-law's visage, I saw a chilling expression etched across her features as she locked eyes with the individuals who had unveiled the truth. As she gritted her teeth, another lawyer interjected, "I've also heard that you were ordered to pay alimony due to the affair that led to the divorce. It's unavoidable." Furious, my sister-in-law directed her glare at the lawyer who spoke, snapping, "I'm not obligated to pay alimony anymore. There's no one left to pay." Her words dripped with disdain, but she was swiftly rebutted by the legal expert. "The right to alimony also transfers upon inheritance, so you'll still owe it to Emma, the sole inheritor." It dawned on me for the first time that I was the sole inheritor of my brother's estate. With their divorce finalized and our parents no longer alive, I was left as the last remaining family member. She seemed to grasp the reality of the situation, her expression morphing into one of horror as she locked eyes with me, prompting me to instinctively step back. Yet her demeanor remained defiant as she resumed her tirade. "Don't I deserve half of the estate now that the divorce is settled?" A lawyer, looking dismayed, interjected, "Didn't Oliver provide you with funds upon the finalization of the divorce?" I have the receipt certificate. Another lawyer chimed in. He also acquired a house prior to the marriage, so it isn't subject to property division. I found a sense of satisfaction in witnessing her being lectured by the lawyers. Despite her protestations, she'd appeared to recall something and chuckled lightly as she continued, "There's still the life insurance. I should be the beneficiary." Her resilience impressed me, navigating through a hostile environment where everyone seemed to be against her. Then, with a smirk, she added, "I changed the beneficiary of Oliver's life insurance to myself." However, the lawyer promptly refuted her claim regarding the life insurance, stating, "Oliver was a resolute individual, so it's likely he made the change upon finalizing the divorce." As I sifted through my brother's belongings, I stumbled upon the life insurance policy, but my sister-in-law caught sight of it. Swiftly, she snatched the document from my grasp, her impatience evident as she scrutinized the beneficiary. However, her demeanor shifted to one of disappointment as she handed the certificate back to me, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It was then that I noticed the beneficiary was me. Realizing her efforts were futile, my sister-in-law blurted out her true sentiments without filter. "I married a lawyer because I thought he was wealthy. But all I got was a pittance, and now I have to pay alimony. It's a colossal mistake." In response, the lawyer's expression hardened as he retorted. Oliver expressed similar sentiments. He regretted seeking the counsel of a marriage counselor, lamenting the monumental mistake he had made. Although my brother never confided such sentiments to me, his honesty was well known among his colleagues and subordinates. Faced with undeniable facts, my sister-in-law turned on her heel and departed from my brother's house. As time passed, she found herself obligated to pay alimony in installments, despite lacking stable employment. Desperate to fulfill her financial obligations, she hastily sought out employment opportunities. However, her lack of commitment led to a string of short-lived jobs. In a desperate attempt to secure quick wealth, she returned to the marriage counseling agency and set her sights on a wealthy individual. Deceiving him with promises of financial gain through marriage, she exploited his trust and attempted to swindle him. Yet, her scheme unraveled swiftly when the man saw through her deceit and reported her to the authorities. Subsequently, she was arrested for marriage fraud, facing the consequences of her actions. According to a lawyer from my brother's law firm who disclosed the truth, no alimony was ever paid to me. When I consulted the lawyer regarding the situation, I was informed of the recent developments. It was in May when the lawyer relayed the news that my sister-in-law had been apprehended. With her arrest, the likelihood of receiving alimony payments seemed slim in the foreseeable future. However, alimony wasn't my foremost concern. What I truly desired was to witness her facing the consequences of her actions and enduring a fate befitting her deeds. I firmly believe my brother would concur, which is why I wish for thorough police investigation into her other transgressions. I hope she's charged as a felon and brought to justice in court. Meanwhile, my family relocated to a house left behind by my brother, unexpectedly inheriting his property. My husband and sons were overjoyed at the prospect of moving into a spacious house, a stark contrast to our previous cramped apartment. Amidst the excitement, my eldest son, fueled by newfound determination, immersed himself in his law studies. Observing the interactions between his brother's colleagues and subordinates, he felt a strong yearning to pursue a career in law. Though never formally adopted by my brother, I hold on to the hope that he will carry forth my brother's legacy and excel as a lawyer, just as he aspired to be. However, my younger son harbored a sense of disappointment upon learning that I had inherited my brother's entire estate. "I wish I had been adopted by uncle so I could have inherited everything," he confessed candidly. Despite his words carrying a hint of jest, his smile betrayed a hint of genuine longing. My husband's estate, valued at $80 million along with this house, will be inherited by me as we have no children. My sister-in-law's demeanor is always a challenge to contend with. My name is Emma, a 45-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are blessed with 2 sons, one a senior and the other a sophomore in high school. The elder one is currently preparing for his college entrance exams, aspiring to follow his passion for law. His ambition was ignited at a tender age, likely influenced by my brother Oliver, who is a seasoned lawyer. A few years back, Oliver established his own law firm, which my eldest son admires greatly. From his early years, my son demonstrated a knack for academic excellence, a trait that Oliver wholeheartedly encouraged upon learning of his nephew's aspirations. Whenever they meet, my son reaffirms his goal to emulate his uncle's legal career, to which Oliver responds with a warm chuckle, urging him to swiftly pursue his dreams and walk in his footsteps. When my brother, who was married but childless, came to visit, he delighted in playing with my sons and showering them with affection. His wife, a woman a decade his junior, kept her distance from our family, rarely gracing our home with her presence. As a result, our interactions with her were few and far between. My brother and I endured the loss of our parents at a young age, leading him to step into a parental role when I was on the brink of marriage. Soon after my wedding, he followed suit and tied the knot himself. My husband and I felt reassured when we learned of my brother's intention to marry a younger woman. However, upon meeting his fiancée, I was taken aback by her perpetually sullen demeanor. We had anticipated joyous exchanges, considering she was about to marry into our family, yet her expression remained persistently glum as she regarded us. In the presence of my brother and his fiancée, I offered a superficial compliment, saying, "You two make a great pair." Yet my true sentiments emerged only in the quiet moments at home with my husband. I couldn't shake off the curiosity about why she seemed so discontented. As their marriage was sealed, my husband echoed my concerns, remarking with a hint of worry, "She didn't seem particularly joyful as a bride. It's a bit concerning, isn't it?" Shortly before their wedding, my brother tied the knot with his 10 years younger fiancée. To celebrate, my husband, our children, and I paid them a visit at their newly acquired house. The grandeur of the place left me in awe, a testament to my brother's success as a law firm owner. However, the absence of my sister-in-law raised eyebrows. In jest, my husband quipped to my brother, "Has your wife already abandoned ship?" Though meant in good humor, the tension in my brother's reaction left us both uneasy. According to him, whenever there's trouble, his wife retreats to her parents' home. Today, she stayed over to celebrate her mother's birthday. My husband's expression drooped, perhaps regretting his attempt at humor. Then, out of the blue, my brother posed a serious question with a poker face. "If I were ever unable to have children, would you consider letting me adopt one of yours?" I initially brushed it off as a jest, but my brother's earnest demeanor suggested otherwise. Stunned by the unexpected proposal, I found myself unable to respond, while my husband, with a chuckle, replied, "Who knows what the future holds? Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. If you're serious, and if our children are comfortable with it, we can discuss it then." Though my husband seemed to take it lightly, I couldn't shake off the underlying concerns about both the adoption suggestion and the strained relationship between my brother and his wife. It wasn't my place to interfere in their marital issues, but I couldn't help but worry. Subsequently, whether it was our visits to my brother's home or his visits to ours, he always came alone. His wife was conspicuously absent, further fueling my apprehensions. My brother never brought up his wife, so I refrained from prying into their relationship. After over a decade of marriage, her presence faded into obscurity in my mind. This year, as my eldest son's acceptance into his dream law school was celebrated at our house, my brother broached the topic of adoption once again. "Just as I mentioned before, would you consider allowing me to adopt one of your children?" he inquired. Their inability to conceive led him to revisit the idea. The last time we discussed it, they were newlyweds, so there was no urgency. Yet this time, my brother's tone conveyed seriousness. Despite the weight of the proposal, my husband's response was swift and nonchalant. "Would you prefer our eldest son, considering his ambition to become a lawyer?" he quipped. While my husband's manner seemed casual, I remained cautious, mindful of the profound impact such a decision would have on our sons' lives. Even though my brother, their uncle, would be adopting them, I couldn't shake the worry about my sister-in-law's potential treatment of my sons, who wouldn't be her own flesh and blood. Seeking reassurance, I cautiously asked my brother, "Is your wife on board with the adoption?" His response, accompanied by a wry smile, was somewhat comforting. "Don't fret over her. We've discussed it already," he assured me. While I felt relieved knowing they had addressed the matter, I couldn't reach a decision immediately. Instead, I resolved to involve my sons in the discussion and let them weigh in. considering they were already in high school and capable of making their own choices. We left the matter unresolved that day, but a few days later, I received an urgent call from my brother's lawyer's office. They informed me that he had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Frantically, I made my way there, only to find the law firm's staff anxiously awaiting news. It appeared my brother had suffered a stroke at work and was now unconscious. Once I arrived, the law firm staff departed, leaving me to confront the worrying situation alone. The law firm staff also mentioned they couldn't reach my sister-in-law. I tried calling the landline, but received no answer, and I didn't have her cell phone number. Eventually, my husband and younger son arrived, but still there was no luck reaching her. It was my younger son who stumbled upon a smartphone amidst my brother's belongings. With some effort, we managed to unlock it and began searching for her contact details. When she finally picked up the call from that phone, her response was laced with anger. "I warned you not to call again. I'll take legal action," she snapped. Attempting to convey urgency amidst her tirade, I interjected, "It's Emma, Oliver's sister. My brother has collapsed and is in the hospital." Her tone softened upon realizing it was me on the line. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I mistook you for Oliver. You said he collapsed?" she inquired. After updating her on my brother's condition and the hospital he was admitted to, her response took a surprisingly casual turn. "I'm unable to come to the hospital right now due to prior commitments. Please keep me informed," she requested before abruptly ending the call. I couldn't help but wonder if my sister-in-law had more pressing matters to attend to, especially considering her husband's illness. With the realization that she wouldn't be of any assistance, we resolved to care for my brother ourselves. Since my eldest son had completed his university entrance exams and was spending most of his time at home, he took on the responsibility of visiting my brother daily on my behalf. Despite our efforts, my brother remained unconscious and in critical condition. However, my sister-in-law never reached out or made an appearance at the hospital. Nearly a week after my brother was admitted, I made another attempt to contact her. This time, she answered the phone promptly, her tone oddly cheerful. "What's the matter? Is he dead?" she exclaimed, lacking any semblance of empathy. Struggling to contain my anger, I responded calmly, "He's still alive. Why haven't you visited him at the hospital?" Her response, dripping with indifference, only fueled my frustration. "I'm neither a doctor nor a miracle worker. There's nothing I can do for his recovery," she retorted dismissively. Her callous demeanor pushed me over the edge and I hung up the phone, unable to suppress my growing rage. Suspicions began to brew within me regarding my brother's motives for wanting to adopt one of my sons. It dawned on me that perhaps he had resigned himself to the idea of not having children with his wife, indicating possible discord in their marriage. Curiosity led me to inquire about how they met after their marriage was finalized, to which my brother revealed they had been introduced through a marriage counseling agency. The revelation stirred a mix of emotions within me, especially the notion that my sister-in-law may have married my brother solely for the security of his profession as a lawyer and the promise of a comfortable life. This thought fueled my indignation further, but when I confided in my husband, his response cut deeper. If Oliver were to pass away in his current state, his wife would inherit the entire estate given their lack of children, he remarked callously. As my brother joined us to celebrate my eldest son's recent achievements and broached the topic of adoption, I couldn't shake the suspicion that perhaps his interest stemmed from considerations of inheritance rather than genuine familial intentions. I wish I could have reached a decision then and there, but the situation left me feeling powerless. After my brother's departure that day, I casually broached the topic with my two sons. To my surprise, my younger son expressed eagerness to be adopted, viewing it as a ticket to an easier life under Oliver's wing. Unlike his older brother, he seemed content to go with the flow, lacking clear aspirations for the future. I had anticipated my eldest son, who admired his brother, to follow suit, but his response caught me off guard. "I don't want to be adopted," he declared firmly. "As the eldest, it's my responsibility to take care of you, Mom, and Dad." His words filled me with pride, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that my eldest son, with his ambition to become a lawyer, was the more suitable candidate for adoption. Although I longed to initiate the adoption process on behalf of my unconscious brother, the circumstances thwarted my efforts. Despite my reluctance to claim any share of my brother's inheritance, I couldn't bear the thought of a single penny falling into the hands of my sister-in-law, who seemed to be eagerly awaiting his demise. I could only hold on to the hope of my brother's recovery, but it never came to fruition. Days later, he passed away, leaving me with the solemn duty of informing my sister-in-law. My brother has passed away. Can we arrange a funeral? I conveyed the somber news. To my surprise, her response was oddly cheerful. You have the final say. Just please don't involve me in any formalities, she replied before abruptly ending the call. Feeling a surge of frustration, I held back my emotions as my husband and I took charge of planning the funeral. With assistance from the law firm's staff, we navigated through the arrangements. While my husband expressed concerns about the firm's future, my brother had already ensured its stability by entrusting its management to a capable individual. Thus, the firm would continue to operate seamlessly as a corporation. At the funeral, the turnout was overwhelming, with countless wreaths brought in to pay respects. The hall overflowed with mourners, a testament to the profound impact my brother had on so many lives. As the funeral unfolded, I found myself once again marveling at the incredible person my brother had been. Alongside me, my son lent a hand in the somber proceedings. However, his mood darkened upon witnessing the notable figures in attendance, presidents of major corporations, politicians, and other dignitaries. I should have been the one adopted, he lamented bitterly. I never realized how remarkable he truly was. My husband and I empathized with his sorrow, understanding the weight of his realization. As I fulfilled my role as a pallbearer, no one questioned the absence of my sister-in-law, nor was it brought up in conversation. I couldn't help but wonder if we were the only ones privy to the knowledge of my brother's marriage. They hadn't had a wedding ceremony, instead they simply embarked on a honeymoon. It dawned on me that even our relatives might have been unaware of their marital status. Reflecting on the situation, I couldn't help but harbor regrets. If only they hadn't married, there wouldn't be a need for a wife who failed to show up at her husband's funeral. And I lamented not allowing my brother to adopt my younger son sooner, fearing that she might seize control of my brother's estate with the support of the law firm's staff. The funeral for my brother had concluded, and I extended invitations for everyone to gather at his house for a meal, expressing my gratitude. Thanks to all of you, my brother will be able to rest in peace, I said, my voice laden with sorrow. As we mourned together, my sister-in-law made a sudden appearance, clad in a flashy pink coat, as if timed to coincide with the conclusion of the funeral. Addressing her with a mix of surprise and suspicion, I asked, "Why have you chosen this moment to come?" With a wide grin on her face, she spoke loudly for all to hear. As my husband's wife, I inherit his estate, valued at $80 million, along with this house. With no children in the picture, everything belongs to me. Her triumphant declaration prompted laughter from my brother's colleagues, leaving us puzzled by their reaction. My sister-in-law shot them a glare and scolded. "What's so funny? How rude." Her smirk quickly faded when one of the lawyers interjected, "We're aware that you're officially divorced." The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. "You were divorced?" I exclaimed incredulously upon hearing the news the day before my brother's collapse. Glancing at my sister-in-law's visage, I saw a chilling expression etched across her features as she locked eyes with the individuals who had unveiled the truth. As she gritted her teeth, another lawyer interjected, "I've also heard that you were ordered to pay alimony due to the affair that led to the divorce. It's unavoidable." Furious, my sister-in-law directed her glare at the lawyer who spoke, snapping, "I'm not obligated to pay alimony anymore. There's no one left to pay." Her words dripped with disdain, but she was swiftly rebutted by the legal expert. "The right to alimony also transfers upon inheritance, so you'll still owe it to Emma, the sole inheritor." It dawned on me for the first time that I was the sole inheritor of my brother's estate. With their divorce finalized and our parents no longer alive, I was left as the last remaining family member. She seemed to grasp the reality of the situation, her expression morphing into one of horror as she locked eyes with me, prompting me to instinctively step back. Yet her demeanor remained defiant as she resumed her tirade. "Don't I deserve half of the estate now that the divorce is settled?" A lawyer, looking dismayed, interjected, "Didn't Oliver provide you with funds upon the finalization of the divorce?" "I have the receipt certificate." Another lawyer chimed in, "He also acquired a house prior to the marriage, so it isn't subject to property division." I found a sense of satisfaction in witnessing her being lectured by the lawyers. Despite her protestations, she appeared to recall something and chuckled lightly as she continued, "There's still the life insurance. I should be the beneficiary." Her resilience impressed me, navigating through a hostile environment where everyone seemed to be against her. Then, with a smirk, she added, "I changed the beneficiary of Oliver's life insurance to myself." However, the lawyer promptly refuted her claim regarding the life insurance, stating, "Oliver was a resolute individual, so it's likely he made the change upon finalizing the divorce." As I sifted through my brother's belongings, I stumbled upon the life insurance policy, but my sister-in-law caught sight of it. Swiftly, she snatched the document from my grasp, her impatience evident as she scrutinized the beneficiary. However, her demeanor shifted to one of disappointment as she handed the certificate back to me, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It was then that I noticed the beneficiary was me. Realizing her efforts were futile, my sister-in-law blurted out her true sentiments without filter. "I married a lawyer because I thought he was wealthy. But all I got was a pittance, and now I have to pay alimony. It's a colossal mistake." In response, the lawyer's expression hardened as he retorted. Oliver expressed similar sentiments. He regretted seeking the counsel of a marriage counselor, lamenting the monumental mistake he had made. Although my brother never confided such sentiments to me, his honesty was well known among his colleagues and subordinates. Faced with undeniable facts, my sister-in-law turned on her heel and departed from my brother's house. As time passed, she found herself obligated to pay alimony in installments, despite lacking stable employment. Desperate to fulfill her financial obligations, she hastily sought out employment opportunities. However, her lack of commitment led to a string of short-lived jobs. In a desperate attempt to secure quick wealth, she returned to the marriage counseling agency and set her sights on a wealthy individual. Deceiving him with promises of financial gain through marriage, she exploited his trust and attempted to swindle him. Yet, her scheme unraveled swiftly when the man saw through her deceit and reported her to the authorities. Subsequently, she was arrested for marriage fraud, facing the consequences of her actions. According to a lawyer from my brother's law firm who disclosed the truth, no alimony was ever paid to me. When I consulted the lawyer regarding the situation, I was informed of the recent developments. It was in May when the lawyer relayed the news that my sister-in-law had been apprehended. With her arrest, the likelihood of receiving alimony payments seemed slim in the foreseeable future. However, alimony wasn't my foremost concern. What I truly desired was to witness her facing the consequences of her actions and enduring a fate befitting her deeds. I firmly believe my brother would concur, which is why I wish for thorough police investigation into her other transgressions. I hope she's charged as a felon and brought to justice in court. Meanwhile, my family relocated to a house left behind by my brother, unexpectedly inheriting his property. My husband and sons were overjoyed at the prospect of moving into a spacious house, a stark contrast to our previous cramped apartment. Amidst the excitement, my eldest son, fueled by newfound determination, immersed himself in his law studies. Observing the interactions between his brother's colleagues and subordinates, he felt a strong yearning to pursue a career in law. Though never formally adopted by my brother, I hold on to the hope that he will carry forth my brother's legacy and excel as a lawyer, just as he aspired to be. However, my younger son harbored a sense of disappointment upon learning that I had inherited my brother's entire estate. "I wish I had been adopted by uncle so I could have inherited everything," he confessed candidly. Despite his words carrying a hint of jest, his smile betrayed a hint of genuine longing. Hello, my name is Madison, and I'm 34 years old. When I was growing up, my biggest dream was to be a journalist or work with magazines. I loved writing and was good at keeping up with trends. So it wasn't surprising that I decided to study journalism and media in college. After I graduated, I worked for several companies, but none of them were the big famous ones. I didn't mind because I was doing what I had always dreamed of. Eventually, I got a job at a pretty big company and felt like I had finally made it. A few years after I graduated college, when I was about 28, I met my husband, Scott. Scott's family was pretty wealthy and had their own business. I'm mentioning this because his mother, Trisha, always disliked me and insulted me. She thought I wasn't good enough for him and that I shouldn't have married him. Scott and I dated for about 3 years before we decided to get married. As I mentioned, Scott's mom, Trisha, didn't like me. She always put me down and made fun of me for working at a magazine and having a journalism degree. At first, her behavior really hurt me because no one should be treated like that. But for some reason, Trisha thought it was okay to treat me that way. Scott always defended me against his mother. His dad, Fred, also stood up for me whenever he heard Trisha's remarks. I was thankful for both of them. As time went on, I started to get used to Trisha's insults. Scott even suggested that we limit contact with her, but I didn't agree. Scott worked with his dad, and if he stopped talking to his mom, it could make things awkward for Fred. Fred was a wonderful person, and I didn't want to put him in a tough spot. I also didn't want Scott to cut off his family because of me. I learned to deal with it mostly because we only saw Trisha twice a month at most. But things changed when Fred had to go overseas for a business project. Trisha didn't want to be alone, so Scott and I agreed to let her stay with us until Fred returned. I had a bad feeling about it, but I believed that family should always come first. Living with Trisha was really tough. She constantly nitpicked and criticized everything I did, and the insults never seemed to stop. But I could handle all of that as long as she didn't actually harm me. However, everything changed during one week that turned out to be really difficult. I had a major presentation coming up at work. We were redesigning a section of our magazine, and I was responsible for making it great. This presentation was crucial because it would determine if I got a promotion, but Trisha didn't understand why it was so important. I don't think knowing would have changed her opinion of me anyway. Since Trisha was staying with us, she saw how stressed I was about it. The night before my big presentation, I was talking to Scott about how nervous I felt when she overheard us. She walked into the living room and decided to share her thoughts. This is a big deal. All the top bosses will be watching me. I can't imagine how scary this must be for you. I'm glad you had it easier with your business, but this is such a different game. I'm so scared of messing everything up. Don't say that. You'll do great. I wish I could believe that. I just feel so unsure of everything. What if I mess up the presentation? I couldn't help but overhear you both talking. Mom, we're having a private conversation. Well, Madison, I just wanted to say that you have nothing to worry about. You probably don't have the skills for this, so you'll probably do badly tomorrow. Excuse me? Just treat it as a chance to quit your job and be a housewife. Then maybe you'll be good enough for my son. I can't believe he married a journalist. Mom, you're crossing a line. Leave. You know what? I don't have time for your nonsense, Trisha. I have bigger things to worry about than your opinion of me and my relationship with your son. How dare you talk to me like that? So it's fine for you to talk to me that way, but not the other way around. Scott, say something. Your wife is disrespecting your mother. She's just standing up for herself. I don't see anything wrong with it. She's manipulating you. Look at how easily you can turn your back on family. Madison will regret this. I was furious at Trisha for barging into Scott's and my conversation and insulting me so blatantly. Scott tried to apologize for his mother's behavior, but I stopped him. He wasn't responsible for her hurtful words. After that, we decided to call it a night and went to sleep. I was too focused on everything else to even think about Trisha's threat towards me. I figured she would just continue tormenting me, which honestly, I didn't care about at that moment. Dealing with her could wait until after my presentation. The next day, I hurried into work with my laptop, ready for my presentation. But when I opened it, I realized something was terribly wrong. All the files on my desktop were gone, and my laptop had been reset. I started to panic. I had emailed the presentation to myself, so I tried to calm down. But when I logged into my email, I saw that all my emails were deleted, even from the trash. My heart sank and tears filled my eyes. I felt an overwhelming fear. I had to explain everything to my boss, who was not happy. He yelled at me for a while before telling me not to bother with the presentation because he had someone else do it in case I messed up. I knew then that any chance for me to advance in the company was gone. I couldn't believe this was happening. I rushed home in tears. Scott hadn't left for work yet, and when he saw me, he took the day off to be with me. He held me as I cried. And when I calmed down a bit, he asked me what happened. "What's wrong, honey? Did the presentation not go well?" "There was no presentation, at least not one that I gave." "Huh? What do you mean? You put so much effort into preparing for it. You hardly slept those past few days because you were working so hard." "I know, but when I got there, I opened my laptop and found out that everything had been deleted." "What? How did that happen?" "I don't know. It was really embarrassing and humiliating to have to explain it to my boss." "Wait, did you not back it up somewhere else?" "Yeah, I emailed it to myself, but even my inbox and trash were emptied." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened." "What did your boss say?" "He yelled at me a lot, called me unprofessional and lazy. He had someone else do the presentation." "But you still have your job, right?" "Yeah, but I'm stuck in this position. I can't move up or get promoted. I'm done here." "Don't worry, honey. You'll find a better job. I'll be here for you through it all. Just keep working here until you're ready to leave." "Yeah, I'll give my notice now. I can't believe I worked so hard for this, and just when I was close, it slipped away." I felt really down after that. I take pride in doing well on my projects, so what happened was really tough for me. It was traumatic, to say the least. I wasn't given any more important work at my job. I held off on quitting, but after another week, I knew it was time. I handed in my notice and waited for my time to be up. Through it all, Trisha seemed strangely happy. She saw me crying once and made remarks about how she knew I would fail. At first, I was mad at her, but then I started thinking about her behavior. Maybe she was happy because she thought I would finally become a housewife, or maybe she was happy because she had something to do with my career falling apart. I can't quite explain it, but I had this gut feeling that Trisha had something to do with my laptop troubles. I wanted to talk to Scott about it, but I needed evidence first. So I decided to set up a hidden camera in the office to catch Trisha in the act. I ordered a camera disguised as a smoke detector and installed it on the ceiling. I connected it to my phone and got ready to implement my plan. The next step was to somehow let Trisha know about my upcoming presentation. That wasn't too hard. I just paced around the office looking worried. Scott was still at work, unaware of what I was doing. Trisha noticed my anxious behavior and asked what was going on. "What's wrong? Are you stressed about another project?" "I need to tell someone. Since you asked, I've been given another chance to present my work, and it could lead to a raise." "Oh, really?" "Yeah, and I'm really nervous because this is my last chance to get things right, and I have to do it well." "Why aren't you telling Scott? Is it because you're embarrassed about your job?" "No, it's because I don't want to disappoint him again. Just keep it between us, okay? I'm not promising anything, but it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow." "Why do you always want me to fail?" "I just think you'd be better off as a housewife. It's less embarrassing than what you're doing now." "I don't have time for this, and I don't care what you think. Please leave me alone so I can practice my presentation before Scott gets home." Trisha left, but not before giving my laptop a look and smirking at me. I had a feeling something was up. I stayed in the office a little longer, only leaving when Scott came home. Trisha didn't mention my presentation, but she kept smirking at me during dinner. After we went to bed, I checked the footage from the hidden camera on my phone, keeping an eye out for any movement. Scott and I watched a few episodes of our favorite TV series as usual. There wasn't any action until midnight when Trisha entered the office. I quickly showed Scott what was happening on my phone. He seemed puzzled at first, but then he saw Trisha messing with my laptop until it shut off and restarted. Scott looked at me shocked. I explained what I had done, and he was furious with Trisha. Trisha was still in the office, snooping through my files. Scott got up and stormed into the office. He flung the door open, and Trisha looked startled when she saw him. Scott tried to stay calm and asked her what she was doing. "What are you doing in here, Mom?" "Oh, nothing." "Really? Then why is Madison's laptop still open? Are you accusing me of going through her stuff?" "I think you did more than that, Mom. Firstly, I came in here because I thought this room needed tidying up. And secondly, you know your wife isn't forgetful. She wouldn't leave her laptop open. You wanted to clean the office at midnight, and don't talk about Madison like that. Don't talk to me like that. I'm still your mother." "Yeah, my mother who loves to hurt and sabotage my wife." "What are you saying?" "We caught you on camera resetting Madison's laptop. You were spying on me?" No, we just wanted to make sure that what happened to Madison wouldn't happen again. That's disgusting. How could you film me without my consent? I didn't put cameras in your room. I put one in my office, and you went in there without my permission. And even if it was wrong, it's nothing compared to what you did to Madison. I want you out of our house tomorrow. But I'll be all alone, Trisha protested. I don't care. I don't want to talk to you. The next morning, Trisha tried to delay things by helping with breakfast and washing dishes, but Scott wasn't having it. As soon as she finished, Scott came down with her bags and told her he'd packed for her and ordered her an Uber. Trisha pleaded with him to let her stay, even crying, which was unusual for her as she usually made others cry. Scott ignored her and went to our room. Trisha turned to me and started yelling, blaming me for setting her up. I told her if anyone should be yelling, it's me. She's lucky I haven't shared the footage with her friends and family. If they knew what she did to me, she'd lose them all. That shut her up pretty quickly. After Trisha left, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Though I was still upset about my job situation, I knew I could bounce back and do even better. Scott was my biggest support throughout everything. Once my notice period ended, I took some time off to rest and figure out my next steps. Over the next few months, I took courses in different areas of my field. I knew if I focused on a specific niche and found the right job, I could achieve a lot more. I didn't want to expose Trisha, but after years of her putting me down, I wanted to show her what I was capable of. I wanted to reach heights even she hadn't seen. With Scott's help, I got recommendations in various places. Being wealthy also meant having many connections, which was a huge advantage. With my experience and Scott's support, I landed the role of chief editor at a major magazine known worldwide. The work was tough, but it was worth it. Somewhere along the journey to becoming chief editor, I forgot about my desire to show Trisha what I was capable of. In fact, we hadn't had any contact with her during those months. I knew Scott still spoke with his father because they worked together, but Scott hadn't heard much from or about his mother. His father, Fred, said she was upset with us about something but wouldn't say what. At least Trisha took my warning seriously, but I knew I'd have to see her eventually, and it turned out my company was throwing a huge party with lots of big names invited, including Trisha and Fred. Scott and I dressed our best because, for the first time, we were both important figures. When we arrived, Trisha and Fred spotted us and waved us over. We greeted them, and Trisha gave me a once-over before smirking. "Look at you trying to fit in," she sneered. "Trisha, ignore her, Madison. You look lovely, as always," Fred said kindly. "Thanks, Fred. How have you been?" "Yeah, how's unemployment treating you?" Trisha interjected. "Wait, you're unemployed?" Fred asked, surprised. "Oh yeah, she messed up at her job, and they let her go. I've always said she's not good enough for our son." "Look at her, she can't even keep a job," Trisha mocked. "That's enough, Mom," Scott said sternly. "Stop siding with her. It's bad enough having to see her everywhere. We wouldn't have to if you just left her like I said," Trisha insisted. "Okay, that's enough. Either you stop talking or I'm leaving," Scott warned. "But Madison, sweetie, if you need a job, let me know. It would be great to work with you," Fred offered sincerely. "That's really kind of you, Fred, but I can't accept the offer," I replied. "Of course not. I told you she's lazy and incompetent," Trisha muttered. Just then, my name was called, and people started cheering. I looked towards the small stage, and the CEO was there, waving and motioning for me to come up. I turned to Fred and Trisha, excusing myself. Fred looked amused, but Trisha seemed confused and angry. The CEO gave a speech, praising my work in the company and my ability to innovate and bring new ideas to the magazine. The audience cheered loudly, asking for a speech. I thanked Scott for his support and all my colleagues who helped make the magazine what it is. I ended by thanking the one person who doubted me because their negativity pushed me to be better. As I walked off the stage, everyone stopped me to congratulate me and ask about the unnamed critic, but I kept that to myself. I made my way over to the table where Fred, Trisha, and Scott were seated. Scott hugged me tightly, congratulating me, and Fred stood up to hug me too. Trisha glared at me. "Oh, Madison, this is amazing. I can see why you wouldn't want to work with us," Fred said. "Thanks, Fred. Although I'll admit, if you'd offered me the job about 6 months ago, I might have taken it." "You should have. At least then you'd be paid more," Trisha snorted. "Paid more? I could never put a price on this, Fred replied. Right, she's not worth all that money, Trisha scoffed. No, I mean I couldn't match what she's earning right now. What do you mean? Trisha asked, confused. Do you want me to tell her, Madison? It might come off as boasting if I say it, Fred offered. Madison makes at least 5 times more than I do in her current position, Fred revealed. Here? How? Oh yeah, she must be making way more than Scott or I could ever imagine, Trisha exclaimed. That can't be right. You must be mistaken, Trisha insisted. He's not mistaken, Mom. I really did mean it when I thanked you. You've been nothing but a bully to me, and I hope seeing me more successful than anyone in your family stings. Anyway, I have other people to talk to. Excuse us, Trisha. Fred, feel free to join us anytime. Goodbye, I said as Scott and I left a stunned Trisha at the table. Fred laughed and raised his drink to me as Scott and I walked away. I'd never felt more alive and satisfied. It was an incredible accomplishment, and I'm grateful to Scott for his support. Thanks for listening.
Despite my efforts to be kind, it's disheartening that my sister-in-law spoke with an icy tone, seemingly pushing me away. She remained resolute about claiming my brother's estate and showed no willingness to compromise. I couldn't shake the growing anxiety that enveloped me, casting a shadow on my spirits. I'm Kathy Morgan, a 27-year-old doctor at a university hospital. My brother recently passed away, and today marks his funeral. I find myself at his house, surrounded by people who remember him. Amidst the crowd, Jocelyn, my brother's wife, approached me. Ah, there you are, Kathy. I'm glad I found you. You've been working hard today. Could we talk over there for a bit? Jocelyn asked, initiating a conversation. Yes, Jocelyn. Sure, I replied, following her. My brother and Jocelyn married 3 years ago and moved into the spacious house where we grew up. The house, meticulously built by our parents, boasted a large garden and other features. Despite our comfortable living arrangements, our family faced challenges. My mother battled a chronic illness, confining her to a hospital since my early childhood. My father's wealth allowed us a comfortable life, but he too succumbed to overwork and joined my mother in death. Left alone in the large house, my brother and I became each other's company. Though he continued living there and flourished in his medical career, I ventured into a life of my own after university. The days leading up to my brother's funeral passed in a blur. As we moved from crowded rooms to quieter hallways, Jocelyn approached me with a grave matter. Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about, Kathy. It might seem too soon after the funeral, but it's about the inheritance. It's a very important matter. So, I believed it was necessary to have a discussion with you beforehand. However, I found myself bewildered and uneasy as Jocelyn suddenly broached the topic of inheritance. Are you talking about my brother's inheritance? I asked, seeking clarification. Yes, that's right. Since we don't have children, the inheritance would be between you and me. Legally, I would get 3/4 and you 1/4, so I would inherit $1 million. Jocelyn explained, her hand covering her mouth, a subtle smile forming. Her revelations didn't stop there. Oh, and I'll be taking this house too. After all, it's the house where I lived with Henry, and it's filled with our memories as his wife. It's only natural that I inherit the house, right? She continued, What I wanted to confirm with you, Kathy, was this. You don't have any objections, do you? Jocelyn spoke gently and calmly, but there was a lack of the expected sorrow over losing her husband. I had only met Jocelyn at my brother's wedding, making this our second encounter. The indescribable unease I felt during our first meeting returned as I observed her behavior. Back then, I only vaguely understood, but now, after losing my brother, she seemed to be revealing her true nature. Unable to contain my discomfort, I confronted Jocelyn. Jocelyn, I think this is not the way such important matters should be discussed. Properly, on another day, I asserted. Upon my objection, Jocelyn suddenly turned distant. Her previously calm face tightened, and she looked at me with cold eyes. "Oh, is that so? I'm trying to be nice, and yet you don't understand. What a pity. Well, I have a reliable lawyer. I will make sure to get my share of the inheritance," she said, her tone condescending. "I married Henry because he came from a wealthy family. Why would I marry such a serious and boring man for any other reason? He was truly uninteresting, and I'm genuinely relieved that he's gone from this world." I couldn't believe what Jocelyn was saying. My bad premonition about my sister-in-law was proving true. Did my brother know this side of her? If he did, why did he choose to marry someone so unsuitable for him? Shocked and unable to say anything, I watched as Jocelyn walked away, having said what she wanted and seen my reaction. She probably felt there was no need to stay any longer. I stood there frozen, overwhelmed by complex emotions. Even after returning to my own home, I felt downcast and engulfed in gloom. I had a feeling that more unpleasant things might follow, leaving me restless as these thoughts weighed on me. I found myself reminiscing about the years spent with my brother, feeling as if my heart would burst. Realizing I was now alone, tears involuntarily traced my cheeks. Then, a precious promise I had made with my brother vividly came back to me, as if I were seeing it right in front of my eyes. "Kathy, I've decided when I grow up, I'll become a doctor. One good enough to cure Mom's illness. If Big Brother is going to be a doctor, then I'll become one too. We'll study together and find a cure for Mom's illness, right? Let's work hard to become doctors together. Then Mom will surely get better," my brother had declared, his face beaming with happiness. That important promise echoed in my mind after our mother passed away. My brother reaffirmed his resolve to me, saying, "Kathy, I've decided to pursue medicine. There are many people like Mom fighting against diseases. I want to continue researching until we find a treatment for her illness." I shared his sentiment, and together we seriously aimed to become doctors. But now my brother is gone, and I felt the weight of working hard for both of us. 3 days later, a problem arose. I received a call on my cell phone from the hospital where my brother had worked. The caller, Robert, a subordinate of my brother, apologized for contacting me suddenly and expressed a need to discuss something regarding Henry's wife. Agreeing to meet at the hospital, I waited in the cafeteria for Robert. He soon appeared and got straight to the point after a brief greeting. He explained, "Actually, yesterday, Jocelyn suddenly came to the ward. She brought some sweets, saying my husband received great care here. Then she asked who was the closest to her husband among his colleagues." Describing Henry as kind and dependable, Robert recounted their college days and work experiences. However, Jocelyn's line of questioning seemed to change, as if she was probing for something more. She then asked, "Is there anything my husband was hiding from me?" Instinctively feeling that getting further involved was dangerous, I answered, "Not that I know of." Suddenly, Jocelyn raised her voice, demanding to see where her husband's belongings were. She insisted that she could check them right there, threatening consequences if anything hidden was found. Understanding that Jocelyn was searching for something related to the inheritance, Robert explained that he refused her request, citing the confidential and personal nature of the ward. However, she was later seen wandering around the hospital, probing other staff. I couldn't forgive Jocelyn for barging into my brother's workplace and troubling unrelated people. Deciding it was best to meet with her directly and settle things, I thanked Robert and was about to leave when Jocelyn appeared at the hospital entrance. It seemed like she was planning to probe around the hospital again today. Noticing me, Jocelyn approached and spoke. "Oh, Kathy, what are you doing here? Were you thinking the same thing, perhaps?" I found myself speechless, maintaining a silent demeanor as Jocelyn suddenly burst into laughter. "You're searching too, aren't you? You don't have to hide it. Searching for what? Pretending you don't know Henry's will. He must have thought that if I got it, nothing good would happen. He would have written a will to prevent me from getting the inheritance. If he did write one, he must have given it to someone without hiding it, so I probed you. But it seemed you didn't know," Jocelyn remarked, continuing her tirade despite my silence. But really, Henry's sister, not knowing anything, he must not have trusted you. You didn't hear anything even when Henry was suffering, did you? Henry didn't rely on you, it seems, she continued, her words hitting me like a barrage. My head spun, and I gradually lost track of what my sister-in-law was saying. Given your reaction, you really didn't know. About a year ago, I noticed Henry's demeanor was different, so I asked him if something was wrong. Then he said he might be ill with the same disease as your mother. He looked very troubled. His complexion was poor too. Henry was often busy and away, and I was out too, so we didn't see each other much at home. But I noticed something was wrong with him. He must have been suffering mentally. As for me, I married him thinking I never have to worry about money. To be burdened with caring for a chronically ill husband was the last thing I wanted, Jocelyn confidently explained, seemingly unaware of the impact her words had on me. In shock, particularly about Henry suffering from an illness, I stood there stunned. Henry sounded normal during the occasional phone calls. He must have hidden it, not wanting to worry me. But I should have noticed something was wrong. We were the only siblings, and I didn't even know that he was suffering from the same illness as our mother. It was terrifying, especially since I had witnessed our mother suffer from it. While I was lost for words in shock, Jocelyn pressed on. Are you blaming yourself, Kathy? Honestly, you and your brother are too serious and gloomy. It's sickening. I can't wait to get the inheritance and say goodbye to such dreary people. After her cutting remark, Jocelyn was about to leave when Robert's voice came from behind me. Excuse me, is this really a conversation to have in the middle of the hospital? Frankly, it's a disturbance. There are other patients here. If you're done, please leave. Robert, is that you? Were you eavesdropping just now? That's very polite of you. Even if Jocelyn raises her voice, if it's a conversation I don't want to hear, I can't help but overhear it. Jocelyn retorted, turning around with a surprised expression. Ah, Dr. Hansen, weren't you abroad? When did you return? Ah, yes, that's right. I departed from there the day before yesterday and just returned. I was supposed to come back sooner, but my flight was delayed. You're Kathy Morgan, Henry's sister, right? I was just about to go see you. This is perfect timing. Yes, I am Henry's sister. I awkwardly responded to the sudden conversation. Scott, seemingly searching for something, began rummaging through his bag. Where is it? Ah, here it is. This here you go. This is Henry's will. He asked me to give it to you if he died. Sorry, it's late. I'm glad I could finally deliver it, Scott explained, handing me Henry's will enclosed in a brown envelope. I couldn't help but wonder why my brother gave the will to Scott. Why did my brother give this to you, Scott? I know, right? I've been friends with Henry for a long time. You might not remember me, Kathy. Do you recognize this? Scott showed me 3 moles on the back of his right hand. As a child, I saw those moles and said they looked like the Big Dipper. Ah, those moles. Could it be Scotty? Scott used to live nearby and was my brother's best friend. I affectionately called him Scotty, and we often played together. He moved away in high school, and I had completely forgotten about him. Kathy, you remembered. That's great. I reconnected with Henry when I became a doctor. I'd always felt we were similar, but I never imagined we'd end up in the same profession. Henry talked about surprising you with our reunion, but then he found out about his illness. That's when he came to me with a request. He knew I also had a law degree, so I guess that's why he trusted me with his will, Scott explained. Finishing his explanation, Scott turned toward Jocelyn, addressing her with a cold tone. Ah, about the inheritance, you might want to give up. Deceiving a kind-hearted person like Henry might work, but not with me. Unfortunately for you, Henry was aware of your cunning nature. He asked me to watch over his wife, in case something happened to him. I've been getting reports from his subordinates about your abnormal behavior, Jocelyn. You were planning to find the will, forge it, and claim the inheritance, weren't you? But if it's too late now, it's in your best interest to back off quietly. Besides, Henry said the right use of the inheritance is something only my sister Kathy would understand. I see, so that's how it is. But to trust a sister who didn't even know about her brother's illness to leave a large sum of money to such a young girl, really, what was he thinking? Who knows what she'll use it for? Jocelyn maintained a defiant attitude, but her face had paled slightly. Looking around, I noticed a crowd had gathered due to the commotion. Among them were young doctors talking to each other. Hey, isn't that the person who wrote that paper and made headlines recently, right? I was thinking the same. That's Kathy Morgan, Henry's sister. I read her paper on rare disease research, and it was truly impressive. I heard she's going to do research abroad soon. The conversation among the young doctors caught the attention of other medical personnel, causing a buzz in the area. More discussions were overheard. Isn't that Henry Morgan's wife causing a scene? She's famous for being seen around Fifth Avenue. Oh, that's true. Shopping for luxury brands, going on trips, living a flashy life. I heard she's been supporting a gigolo. Maybe she's after the inheritance. That's possible. I mean, she's been wandering around the hospital, asking questions. It's creepy. Amidst various conversations, I realized I hadn't yet checked the will from my brother. I peered into the brown envelope in my hands. Inside, there was a piece of stationery and a white envelope marked Will. Upon opening it, I saw it began with "To Kathy" in my brother's handwriting. As I read through it, I was so shocked by the contents that I instinctively handed the will to Scotty. Scotty, this is... After reading the will, Scotty smiled quietly and addressed Jocelyn. Jocelyn, it seems you've lost. Henry was planning to end his marriage with you. The letter says so. About the marriage certificate you forced him to write, it seems Henry never submitted it, so he wanted to assure his sister that she could rest easy. You and Henry were effectively in a common law marriage. You never had any right to the inheritance in the first place. That's a lie. There's no way he would do such a thing. Jocelyn's momentum faded, and she began muttering quietly to herself. Kath, can I see that envelope too? May I? Oh, sure. Scotty peered inside the brown envelope and confirmed its contents, then added another blow. Here's the official will as well, Jocelyn. If you want to see for yourself, I won't stop you. Feel free. Jocelyn's face turned ashen, and she looked visibly upset. She seemed at a loss for words, her lips trembling. Continuous criticism of Jocelyn rose from the onlookers. Jocelyn, now without an escape, was frozen in place. Soon, the hospital's administration, alerted by the commotion, had the crowd dispersed to their respective duties. When I looked up again, Jocelyn was gone. After that day, she disappeared from our family home and never reappeared before me. Following my brother's will, I inherited the estate. My research paper on the rare disease that affected my mother and brother received high acclaim, leading me to relocate overseas to continue my research. Part of the inheritance was used as a donation to help those suffering from the rare disease, and the rest was allocated for research funding. Scotty, my brother's best friend, and now more than that, became my life partner. We, as medical colleagues working abroad, are planning to register after our marriage this June. Our hope to free more people from the grip of the disease that afflicted my mother and brother remains unchanged. Together as husband and wife, we aim to continue our research, supporting each other along the way.
Do you know about a sickness called facial arteriovenous malformation? I was born with it. It made a big bump grow in the middle of my face. This sickness is something you're born with. It happens when your arteries and veins, which usually do different jobs, get connected. This lets blood flow between them, making a big blood clot. I had to have lots of surgeries when I was young, but each surgery made my face look even more strange. When I was in school, especially in elementary school, the boys in my class teased me a lot. Because of this problem with my face, I felt really bad about myself. no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't hide it. I thought I would never find love or get married. I thought no one could love someone who looked as ugly as me. At least that's what I thought until I met him. I, Sophia, used to be very negative and lacked confidence, and others could see that about me. While what people said about my illness affected me a bit, it was mainly my family, especially my sister, who made me feel worse. You see, my sister Mia is really beautiful. She has pretty eyes with double eyelids, long eyelashes, and a perfect nose. People often say how lovely she looks. My parents were really proud of her, and they often bought her new clothes, shoes, and hair accessories. But when it came to me, my illness made me look different, and they acted like I didn't matter. They'd say things like, it would be a shame if Mia was seen with such an ugly sister. Because of this, my parents didn't want me to spend too much time with my sister. Mia didn't care about my illness at all. She treated me like any sister would, even sharing her toys and hair accessories with me. She stood up for me when people said mean things about my face. She was always there when I needed her. I'm so grateful for her kindness. But even though I love Mia and appreciate her support, my parents always favored her. They didn't show much interest in me. For example, even if Mia got average grades, they praised her a lot, saying, "Mia, you're amazing. You're not just pretty, but you're also smart. We're so proud of you." But when I did well on a test, they didn't seem to care. They'd say things like, just being smart isn't enough in life. Even if you're not very smart, you can still do well if you're good looking and friendly. But since you're not pretty, you'll have a tough time. Whenever I found a nice dress I liked, they'd say, that dress would look great on Mia, but it won't suit you. People will laugh at you if you wear it. And when I wanted to try makeup, they discouraged me, saying, makeup won't help much in your case. It's a waste of time. They always compared me to Mia, and everything I did seemed to disappoint them. It made me lose confidence more and more. Mia tried to stand up for me against our parents, but it only made things worse. That's when I realized I didn't really belong in our family, and school wasn't any better. Boys in my class teased me with mean nicknames like monster or face weapon. Some even avoided me, afraid they might catch my illness if they touched me. Even in middle school, things didn't get much better. Some boys would make faces just because I was near them. Even though no one said anything directly to me, I could hear whispers about me. But what really hurt was when I became the target of a cruel game. There was a game where the loser had to confess their feelings to someone in the class, and I was often picked. Of course, I knew they were only confessing because they lost the game, so I always said no. But then they'd go around saying, I got rejected by that monster girl. One boy even yelled at me for turning him down, saying, don't act all high and mighty just because it's a game. At the time, it felt really unfair to me, but I was convinced that my face was a problem. I thought I made people uncomfortable just by being around. I felt guilty. Throughout elementary and middle school, I didn't have any good memories with boys. But there was one exception, just one time, when I fell in love with a boy in my class. It happened in my sophomore year of high school. There was a boy in my class who I ended up sitting next to after the seats were shuffled. He treated me like anyone else, without making fun of me or avoiding me because of my face. He'd say good morning to me every day. I knew he didn't have any romantic feelings for me, but his simple greeting brought me so much happiness amidst all the teasing and avoidance. Naturally, I started to like him. I didn't really want to date him or anything like that. I just wanted our nice interactions to continue. But as time went on, I started to realize that I had feelings for him. After thinking about it a lot, I decided to ask my sister for advice. She told me, just be honest with him about how you feel. So after a lot of thinking, I left a letter on his desk telling him how I felt. A few days later, something strange was happening in class when I got there. People were whispering and looking at me. Then the boy came up to me and asked, did you leave this letter on my desk? I nodded silently, looking down at the ground. Suddenly, I heard a ripping sound above me. Pieces of my torn letter were falling around me. It's a hassle when things like this happen. What will you do if rumors start because of this? You fell for me just because I said hi to you. You're so clueless about love. I didn't mean anything by it. If I gave you the wrong idea, I'm sorry, he said. Then the whole class started clapping and cheering. People were saying things like, wow, you're brave, and that's kind of sad, isn't it? After that, everything's a blur. The next thing I knew, I was home. But I don't remember how I got there. All I could feel was guilt and sadness after that. I couldn't bear to go back to school after what happened, so I stopped going altogether. When my parents found out, instead of supporting me, they said, "Well, he had a point. You caused trouble, so you owe him an apology." They got mad at me for skipping school over something small and tried to make me go back, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. In the end, I dropped out of high school and isolated myself at home. My older sister was worried about me and tried to reach out, but our parents were harsh. They'd yell at me every morning or barge into my room to insult me, saying things like, "You're a disappointment," or "We wish we never had you." Every day, I felt more and more hopeless, wondering why I even existed. My sister noticed how bad things were and talked to our grandparents on our mom's side. The next day, they came over to listen to my side of the story. When they heard what happened at school and how our parents reacted, they were furious. They told our parents, "We'll take care of her," and rescued me from that situation. My grandparents didn't give up on me, even when I felt hopeless. They faced me with love and support, alongside my sister, and little by little, I started to heal. Though my thoughts of ending my life quieted down, I couldn't shake off my fear and distrust of guys, no matter how hard I tried. But my grandpa always lifted me up, saying, "You'll find happiness in your own way, without needing to get married. We just want you to find joy in whatever path you choose. Forget about that guy who hurt you. Dwelling on him is a waste of time. You have so many bright futures ahead, even though we may not have much time left." My grandma was a constant source of comfort, telling me that as long as I was happy, that's all that mattered. She'd compliment me, saying things like, "Your skin is radiant. I envy you," or "Your eyes sparkle like jewels." My sister would often come over to our grandparents' place, and we'd chat and bond. We'd read magazines together, talk about cute makeup, and just enjoy each other's company. After living like this for about 3 years, I started feeling motivated to do something more. I decided to study again to get my high school diploma, which I eventually achieved. Then I began searching for work I could do from home and slowly started making money. It wasn't as much as what others made in regular jobs, but compared to the days when I felt trapped and hopeless, I felt like I had come a long way. Living at my grandparents' house, I was still scared of people's comments about my looks, so I stayed indoors. That's when my parents suddenly showed up one day without even a phone call beforehand. They barged in, saying they needed to talk to me. Out of the blue, they said, "There's a marriage proposal for you. The guy is the son of someone important in a medical foundation. He apparently has his own issues and struggles to find a partner, so they're suggesting you. Isn't this great? He's wealthy and he's willing to take someone like you, who's seen as a burden on society." I was shocked by this sudden news, but my grandparents stepped in to support me. They argued that it wasn't fair to make such a big decision without considering my feelings. My dad, sounding convincing, said, "This might be her only chance. She's been through so much because of how she looks. Why not see this as an opportunity for her to be happy?" I looked at the guy's photo in the marriage document. His face was partly covered by his hair, but I could tell he was overweight and had a peculiar look. I guessed he might also be facing pressure to get married, or he might have some unusual preferences. But even if I said no to the proposal, it seemed like negotiations with the other family were already happening. They were wealthy, and my parents would probably try to push me into the marriage. Despite my own feelings, I felt like I had to accept the marriage proposal to protect my grandparents from any potential trouble. When I said I would accept, my grandparents were shocked. They hugged me tightly, trying to convince me otherwise. "You don't have to agree to something so ridiculous," they said. But through tears, I told them, "Grandma, Grandpa, until now, I felt like life had no meaning. But because you were there for me, I found joy in living. I can never thank you enough. But I don't want to cause you any more trouble, so I've decided to go through with this marriage proposal. Maybe, like Dad said, this is my only chance." My grandparents cried silently and hugged me tightly. A few days later, I had to meet the guy from the proposal, Matthew, and his parents. I didn't expect this meeting to change anything. Matthew seemed shy and kept his head down. His hair covered most of his face, and his skin looked rough. He spoke so softly that I sometimes couldn't hear him. During our meeting, he hardly looked at my face and answered questions with short sentences. I couldn't help but wonder, is this man really going to be my husband? He can barely hold a conversation. But I felt like I had no choice. Both sets of parents were so eager about the marriage. acting like it was already decided. I felt pressured, like I couldn't say no. Eventually, everything was arranged. As the son of a wealthy family, Matthew provided us with a luxurious apartment filled with expensive appliances and furniture. But our conversations didn't flow well. It was like he didn't even see me. He was so quiet all the time. His constant silence started to weigh on me, so I tried to start a conversation. "Why did you agree to this marriage, Matthew?" Surprisingly, he began to take off his shirt. Confused and panicked, I saw that his skin was red and inflamed. He explained, "I have a skin condition called psoriasis. It's not contagious, so don't worry. But because of how it looks, I've never had any romantic experiences. People even spread rumors that I had an STD, which isn't true. And because of my appearance, my parents don't want anything to do with me. They probably arranged this marriage to get rid of me. I'm sorry for dragging you into this." After he explained, he put his shirt back on and bowed deeply to me. I noticed some inflammation on his hairline, and I realized he was growing his bangs long to hide it. "I understand. Please don't worry," I said. "I'm in a similar situation." When he looked up, I told him everything about my past. Hearing my story about high school, he started to cry. "I can't believe someone would treat you like that. It must have been so hard for you. It's awful how people treated you," he said, getting angry on my behalf and offering me comfort. Despite going through his own struggles, Matthew cried and got angry hearing about my past. I couldn't help but think, how kind is this man? When I asked him, he blushed and smiled shyly, saying, "I was thinking the same thing." From that moment on, we spent the whole night sharing our life stories, crying, getting angry, and understanding each other. I tried to learn more about his skin condition and researched different treatments, including diet changes and supplements. I noticed he was picky about food, especially vegetables, so I experimented with different flavors and cooking methods to make meals he enjoyed. Gradually, he started to enjoy eating more and began to feel better physically. We also started doing things like yoga to reduce stress and had many conversations. I saw Matthew's smile grow over time. He never said anything negative about my appearance. Instead, he would blush and say, "You're cute." Once, when I asked if he disliked how I looked, he reassured me, saying, "Not at all. It's part of who you are, and I think it's cute. You've been through so much, but you've stayed strong. I don't think there's another woman who's as strong and wonderful as you," Matthew told me, and those words brought me so much comfort. Over the next few years, we worked on a plan to improve his skin condition. His inflammation started to calm down, and the redness on his hairline became less noticeable. Plus, with his disciplined lifestyle, he lost weight and transformed into a slim and handsome Matthew. I couldn't help but fall in love with him all over again when he trimmed his bangs. It suited him so well. Matthew, who used to be shy about his skin condition, said, "I feel a bit embarrassed to show Sophia." But as he gained confidence, people at his office started to see him differently. He hadn't told anyone about his disease before, thinking they wouldn't understand. But when he finally opened up, he was surprised that everyone accepted him. They even said, "Why didn't you tell us earlier? Trust us more." One day, as we were enjoying our time together, Matthew suddenly suggested, "Hey, what do you think about having a wedding ceremony?" Even though I had become a bit more positive since marrying him, the idea of facing a large crowd still scared me. When I hesitated, he reassured me, saying, "If you really don't like the idea, we don't have to do it." But I thought it would be a nice way to thank the people at my company who supported me. And it's all thanks to you, Sophia, that I can even think about this. The old me would have never considered a wedding because I was too ashamed of my skin condition. But with your help, my symptoms have improved, and I feel like I can face the future more confidently. His kind words touched me, and after thinking it over, I decided to take a step forward and agree to have a wedding ceremony. Since I didn't have many friends, I only invited my parents, grandparents, and my sister. However, less than 4 months before the wedding, my sister found out she was pregnant and decided to avoid gatherings for safety reasons. So in the end, only my parents and grandparents attended. My grandparents were happy to be there, but my parents clearly weren't thrilled about it. Despite their disapproval, they couldn't refuse due to their status, so they reluctantly came. The same went for Matthew's parents. They didn't seem pleased, but because some of their associates and acquaintances were attending, they reluctantly agreed to come. Both sets of parents were skilled at putting on a facade, so they said things they didn't truly mean in front of the other guests. They'd say things like, We struggled with his illness, but we're happy to see how well he's grown. Or, we're proud of our child for facing prejudice with strength. They even pretended to be moved to tears, and some guests, fooled by their false emotions and words, shed sympathetic tears. I couldn't help but feel astonished by their audacity, wanting to appear good despite everything. But Matthew wasn't one to stay silent. Our parents could see that. When it was time for him to speak, he chose to share about his past. He talked about how he faced discrimination in school because of his skin condition, even though it wasn't contagious. People avoided touching anything he touched. Meeting and marrying me had given him hope. He also spoke about my struggles, how I was constantly compared to my older sister and verbally abused by our parents. He mentioned how I was deeply hurt by their words and couldn't even go outside because of cruel comments from classmates about my facial disease in high school. He also shared how he was berated by his parents for his skin condition, being called dirty repeatedly, and he showed proof of their mistreatment. With a determined resolve, Matthew played a recording of his parents' hurtful comments about his skin condition. The recording echoed through the venue, capturing awful statements like, "Your skin disgusts us," and "We regret having a child with such dirty skin." His parents tried to stop it, but it was too late. The stunned silence of the guests spoke volumes, and my parents looked uncomfortable as whispers spread around them. Despite the awkward ending to our wedding, many guests expressed support, saying, "You've been through a lot, and we're here for you." However, this revelation caused a stir later on. It turned out that Matthew's parents were leaders of a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting disabled individuals, advocating for a society where they can live without barriers. The fact that they mistreated their own son, who had a skin condition, contradicted their organization's principles. Criticism and opposition arose, leading them to step down from their leadership roles in the organization. As for my parents, it came to light that they had accepted a hefty dowry to arrange my marriage to Matthew. They were branded as monsters who sold their own child for money by those around them. However, they foolishly squandered the dowry on their own selfish desires and decided to gamble in the stock market without any knowledge, resulting in significant losses. Eventually, they found themselves in debt exceeding $200,000, far surpassing the dowry they received. They had the nerve to ask for our help, but we firmly declined. Despite their persistent attempts, we decided to cut ties with them and move away, changing our phone numbers. Now we're living happily together. It seems like fate truly brought us together. I'm incredibly content at this moment. Though the beginning was rough, meeting and marrying Matthew has brought me immense happiness. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. I hope to catch up with you again in the future.